All right, welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio inside the Hurrdat Sports Grill. I am Michael Severe. For some reason, I'm on here. But Ravi Lulla is on the way. Damon Benning is off. Earlier in the week, Damon said, "Hey, could you do me a favor and come and host the show?" And I was like, "Sure." I'll do a favor. I owe Damon a lot, and so I was like, "Sure, I'll do that." And then yesterday he told me, "Well, it's not with Damon, it's with Ravi because Damon's got stuff going on with his wife, and so we wish her the best." And so I arrive, and then I find out
this is odd because I thought I walked into the wrong place.
I thought I walked in. You were here, and I was like, "Look at Shane." I haven't seen Shane. Well, I got close up to see him because he's Shane. But saw Shane, and Shane was very willing to let me in the building, which was nice. And so I came in the building, and now I will be doing the show this morning with Ravi Lulla. As I said, Damon's off. Lots to get to tonight. I know that. We're going to talk to a lot of stuff. One of the big things we're going to address is a little draft talk. Ravi put that in there because he knows my affinity for the draft. So that's cool. But also getting a whole bunch of other things as well, including the Sweet 16, which starts tonight, which we will not talk about today, I'm assuming. I don't know for a fact because Ravi's got the schedule. But I don't think we'll talk about it being opening day of baseball because I haven't watched a baseball game in like a long time. And so I don't even know who's good anymore, and I don't even know who won the World Series last year. So hopefully we'll get into baseball, but I know we're going to talk about the Sweet 16, which is tonight. I got a lot of breakdowns with that. I got a lot of great analytics for that, and we'll tell you who's going to win games and how you can win money as well, hopefully, when we get to some basketball. But ladies and gentlemen, live from his car, now inside, Ravi Lulla. Good morning,
up, Michael?
How are you doing?
I'm having a tough morning.
I understand, man. I get it. I've grown up around that. I had a roommate who had some health issues similar to yours, and it was a day-to-day battle for him.
Yeah,
very well.
Most days it ends up okay, but yeah, today's one of those days.
Yeah,
but no, I was gonna do the whole show on opening day. Is that?
If you can do it, I'm not gonna be much help. I'm not gonna be much help. I am not. I don't know much about what's going on in Major League Baseball anymore.
Not gonna add much to the equation.
I would not. The Yankees still playing baseball?
I believe they do.
Are they good or bad? I don't even. They won 27 championships. All I know about them. Dodgers, I know have a lot of money.
A lot of money.
I
did
did
spend it all, and maybe Shohei gambled it all. It's hard to say.
I read the story about Shohei Ohtani. I'm reading it to my wife, and she looks at me. And my wife's a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Thinks of everything in the way a therapist would think.
Okay, I love
Analyzes everything, right?
I love it.
So she's looking at me, and she's listening, and she goes, "That doesn't make any sense."
Yep.
I go, "Yeah, that's the problem with it. It doesn't make any sense." Although she said this, she said, there are certain personalities, and many of them are in athletics, who will allow everybody else to do things for them, everything, and be taken advantage of because of it. We saw it in Rocky IV, right?
Yeah.
When you've been an athlete your whole life,
thanks a lot, Paulie,
to where you're 5 or 6 years old, where you're always being told where to be and what to do. You get to a point later in life where you're so used to it that you let people do things and take over things for you.
Yeah, you're helpless. You don't know what to do.
Exactly. You know how to do your thing.
Yeah.
You know how to train, play baseball, basketball, football, but you don't know how to do anything else. I knew a guy who works here, who when I first met him, could do nothing. Like DB could do. I mean, he was working at OPS at the time, doing a great job doing the title, I think, 1 stuff. But in terms of like just regular everyday stuff,
like just normal adult stuff,
couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Just could not do it. And part of that is also you get married young.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a wife like mine who does all the billing stuff and all that, you never do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember talking to DB about stuff, and I would go, you don't know how to write a check?
That's why you got to get divorced like I did, so you have an opportunity to learn all that stuff for the second time.
That's how you grew up. That's how you grew up. Exactly.
Now I'm the adult in the relationship.
Exactly. But you're still a pastry chef or chef?
Yeah. So I think she's pastry chef right now. She's trying to move into a larger pastry, like a larger banquet role. So
and that's a different group of people too.
Oh, chefs are wild.
They are a wild group. If you want to have fun, don't hang out with some former hippies.
No.
Don't hang out with really rich people.
Hang out with chefs. They will go hard.
Better than anybody. They drink more than anybody, and they do it all day long.
Yes.
They're incredible to hang with. I hung with 4 chefs one time for a whole day, and by the end of the day, I was worn out.
Oh, yeah.
I
cannot keep up with chefs. It is.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And what's worse than just regular chefs are chefs on a hotline because they're constantly under stress. Mm-hmm. So she's a banquet chef now. She used to be on the hotline.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But the people that work on hotlines are those people that like thrive in chaos, and so they go harder than anybody.
Yeah.
It's like them and teachers go harder than anybody.
I always tell people the two most stressful things I've ever done in my life is a Friday night at the pizza place, 5 o'clock to 7:30.
Oh yeah,
by far. You're throwing 200 pies. I got brick ovens. I'm burning myself. You know. Or breaking news in a newsroom in the old days.
Yeah.
Trying to get information, trying to do that. They're so similar. It's this intensity of having to get something done, being under immense pressure, actually having the odds against you in many ways.
Yes.
But by the time it's over and you've either gotten the story and gotten it on the air or finished all the pizzas in the rush and getting hammered, you feel this incredible joy.
Yeah, there's like this satisfaction of the
very
accomplishment.
similar. Yep, very similar.
Coming up today, we're going to talk to Mitch Sherman at 8 o'clock.
Mitch!
Michael Bruntz at 8:30. He's got practice or something.
Dude's
so
smart, man.
He is very smart. We love Michael Bruntz.
They have open session today. I was going to go, actually.
Yeah, so that's why Bruntz is a little bit earlier. And then Justen Gammel, we're going to talk a little NFL draft because Severe and I are both huge draft nerds.
Not as much as I used to be. Man.
Really?
It's so funny how much my life has changed.
You like disconnect a little bit?
I disconnected from like pretty much everything. But the draft thing, I told somebody this before. In 1996, which is such an incredible year for the draft because that was, before these recent years, was the greatest year for a wide receiver class, right?
Is that the Keyshawn class?
That's Keyshawn, and better than that, Marvin Harrison.
Oh, yeah.
And many others. But
Keyshawn went one, right?
He went one, yep, which was a big debate at the time. But I did a 300-page draft report that year where I had 360 players evaluated, which was hard back then.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get film. I'm working for my uncle at the time up in Bowie, Maryland. He ran a scouting service, basketball scouting service. And so I was helping him, and I was doing the computer stuff for him. And the whole time I was just working on my draft report. I was working at a place called Giant Foods. Giant Foods is the big grocery store up in D.C., and I was a produce selector. And when I finished my report, I did two things. I went to Rockport because I was going to drop it off at the door of Mel Kiper. I know where his house was.
Yeah.
Not too far from where I live. I dropped it off, but then I picked it up and left. I was terrified. Anyway,
chicken.
I know, chicken. And then
you're already there.
I handed out copies of it to the guys at the produce warehouse.
Yeah.
This is a male-oriented, into football group. And they're all like, whatever. And they start reading through it. They're like, oh, this is good stuff. And they're like, you have the I had Stephen Davis going to the Redskins, back then the Redskins. And they actually did end up taking him in the second round. And when it was over, that next, I think Tuesday was the first day I was back at work, I was a god mention. People were like, oh, my God, you know the draft, this is incredible. And I only stayed there for a year. I made enough money to save up money to go working in TV because I needed to save up money to go working in TV. And it was, that was the highlight of it. And then every year after that, I did lists and I did charts, and all the way up to probably 2017, 2018, where I backed away a little bit more, got kids, other things to do. And then now I still watch stuff. I still listen to stuff.
Yeah.
I still look at tape, with the quarterbacks.
You're not making the charts anymore.
But I'm not making charts anymore. I'm not digging into all the backup offensive linemen. I don't have a top 25 list for my interior linebackers anymore. Don't do that anymore.
So you're no longer a psycho about it.
I'm not crazy. I'm a draft Nick, but not like that level of it at all. No,
that's fair. We don't. Yep. I don't have any interest in backup interior linemen.
Yeah,
I mostly want to talk quarterbacks. So,
yeah, quarterbacks are an easy part. That's what people want to hear about.
I'm pretty basic. I know that you kind of take a lot of pride in the way you evaluate quarterbacks.
I try. Yeah.
It's hard. Who's the one that you were like most sold on that didn't work out?
Most sold on quarterback that didn't work out. Oh my goodness.
That you're like, man, I like this guy.
Yeah.
And it just didn't
happen. Recently, I would say, because it was the year that Baker Mayfield, and give me the top three. It was Baker Mayfield, and it was
let me look it up here for you.
Oh God, it was four guys, right? And it ended up being the one guy that's been really successful is Lamar Jackson, right? Who ended up going
2018.
Yeah, right? And so you had those quarterbacks.
So it was Baker, and then third was Sam Darnold.
Right.
7 was Josh Allen. And 10 was Josh Rosen.
So the one I was most wrong about was Josh Rosen.
Yeah, I was wrong on him too.
I only had one drawback. DB knows this. I don't like sloped shoulders in athletes. I don't like sloped shoulders.
Yeah.
You can go out and curve off, but I don't like
straight down
sloped shoulders. So I'm not a fan of that. And that was the one drawback. But everything else I watched tape-wise, he could make every throw. He seemed to be pretty smart.
Yeah.
he could do a lot of things. I like Baker's accuracy, but I didn't like his precision very well. Josh Allen, I loved him his second to last year at Wyoming when we had a lot of talent around him. His last year there, remember, he opened up against Iowa and threw like 5 picks and struggled.
Pretty bad.
And you didn't know what you were going to get from him. And so overall, when I looked at that class, I just really wasn't in love with anybody. I hated Sam Darnold because he couldn't predict the football.
Yeah.
The dude fumbled the ball. He just never put 2 hands on the ball in traffic. And so out of all of them, I thought Rosen was the safest. What I learned every year over the years, different things. Not worry about as much as interceptions that guys threw. Because sometimes it was the wide receivers and it was drops, and maybe you don't see that.
Yeah, unless you watch all of them.
Exactly. Sometimes I look at things and I say to myself, well, I don't like the way that guy's release is. I go back to Phillip Rivers. I was wrong about Phillip Rivers. It was about his release. Didn't matter. Your release can be anything pretty much as long as you can get the ball to the receiver and get it in a timely fashion. And then safe. Don't think that's the safe pick. That's the worst thing you can think, because the safe pick often means that they're not going to be that great.
Yeah, lower
not
upside.
going to be that great. Yeah, so that was my thing with that one. That's probably the one most recently I was just wrong about, because I had him first. I had him first.
Baker and all those?
I had him first. I had him first. I had Baker, then I had Josh Allen, then I believe I had Lamar Jackson in that one. Yeah, but I just didn't. I don't know. It's weird now. It's if you want to make some money, you have to go back in time. If you go back the last 10 years and you bet against 2/3 of those quarterbacks, you're going to win.
Yeah, 100%.
Because we're at a point now where it's about 60% in terms of success rate. Now, I guess you can look at a Baker, and it's kind of tough to say.
Yeah, because he's been benched. He's
played
the starter
3 teams.
again.
Yeah, now he's a starter again. But most of those guys, it's easy to figure out. Sam Darnold's a bust, and Josh Rosen was an incredible
huge
bust. And a lot of those
Josh
guys
Allen's a hit.
Josh Allen's
a hit.
It's a hit, exactly. Yeah, it's hard to judge, man. It's weird because it's the easiest position to watch, but the hardest one to figure out, because it's more than just head. It's more than just heart. It's just more than physical. It's everything.
Yeah, it's the one that is most dependent on intangibles, I think.
Did people go to your birthday party? Is that important? Right.
Big draft day guy?
Exactly. I love draft day. It's a great movie.
It's dumb, but I love it.
They finally made one for me.
It's dumb.
Thank you very much for making one for me.
It's dumb, but I love it.
Yeah, but no, that's true in a way, right? You've seen it.
Yeah.
You've seen it in high school. You've seen it when you were growing up.
Oh, I used to scout guys for college. Like I would scout high school players for college basketball, and I looked at everything.
Yeah.
And there was a reason I would go to every game I could here, because I wanted to know like what I was getting, right? I remember one kid specifically. He was by far the best player on the team. He was going to go to a similar level to where we were at, and I said pass on him, because just the way he acted during the game, he was kind of throwing temper tantrums and was not didn't seem to be a supportive teammate. And I'm not going to say his name because I don't know how he ended up as a person, and I don't, that doesn't need to be out there, but he was so good. And I was like, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend the next few years babysitting that personality.
Yeah.
Like I just wasn't interested.
I remember looking at Tyjon Lindsey's film, and obviously short area quickness and caught the ball pretty well and had top end speed. I hated the way he acted when he scored. That's silly probably in a way for many people, the way he flipped the ball, the things that he did. I said, I don't want that personality as a part of my team. Obviously, he didn't stay here for that long. Decommitted from Ohio State, came to Nebraska, didn't stay here very long, ended up at Oregon State and all that stuff. But there's things that you watch, those intangibles of the way people act when they're not playing. That's important. It really is.
Well, and it's bigger with quarterbacks, right?
It's big. You're the leader. You're the A1. You're the top 1 personality.
And not
leader.
Not just that, but you're also, you end up being, face the franchise, the whole thing, right? Like you're like, do I want this guy representing me at all times? And for a lot of those guys, it's a no. I was wrong on Josh Rosen too. I loved Josh Rosen. I remember because the nitpick on him was he's too smart, right? That was the thing coming out was, he's too smart.
Too much of an intellectual.
And I was like, you know what? That's a dumb if that's the knock on Josh Rosen, I will take that.
Well, they always say when it goes along with that guy doesn't love football as much as he loves
other stuff. Right?
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for being sort of a kind of having an OCD for football. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, sure.
Like those guys tend to do well. Like I would call
Tom Brady.
Or Peyton Manning is the one I always
definitely
go to.
yes, the sheriff. Yeah,
Peyton definitely has a football OCD, and that's a positive for sure.
Yes,
but if the only knock you can find on a guy is too smart,
Mhm.
I'm probably going to take my chance on that guy.
Sure.
I know it didn't work out with Josh Rosen, but I will take my chances on too smart versus throws too many interceptions.
And you got to watch their whole career.
Yes.
Don't just watch the last year they played. Don't just watch the best year they played. Watch when they're going through adversity. So
how do they act?
May is an interesting one. I know we're going to get this late, but May is a very interesting thing because at his very best was last year, right? 2 years ago now, was at its very best because look at the talent around him. Look at the wide receivers around him. Look how his offensive line played. His defense wasn't as horrible as it was this year. You look at him and you go, okay, is it that guy I'm getting? Or am I getting a guy who doesn't necessarily process very well when I watch him last year? Am I getting that guy? You got to watch it all. You can't just watch him standing there at 7-on-7 or in shorts.
No, you don't learn anything.
You just don't learn anything at all. You got to see, how is he when the pocket is muddy? People are at his feet. How's he handling that? How is he handling against blitz? The best quarterbacks in the history of the NFL do one thing well, and it's handle the blitz. Because you are playing into their strength. If they're a good quarterback, they see it coming, or they know how to adjust to it, and they beat you.
And they know there's not help on the back end.
Exactly.
Right?
With zero coverage a lot of times, you got a chance.
Or there's someplace without help.
There's someplace without help. It's like doubling in the post or whatever, in basketball. But, those are the best guys. And when you find a guy who you think's a good quarterback, and he's a 35% guy against the blitz like Baker Mayfield was for a lot of his career, you're like, well, I don't know if I can have this guy. Because people are going to just blitz him.
Because it's an easy way to beat
They
a guy.
know they're going to do it, exactly.
Right? If you have a guy that's good against the blitz, it becomes really hard to defend him because, A, you don't want to give him time because then he'll figure it out on the back end. And B, you don't want to send a blitz because then you already know he's going to beat you there as well. It's honestly, it's the stat I'm most encouraged about with Brock Purdy is how good he is against the blitz.
Yes, he's incredible.
And that is the one thing where I'm like, this maybe isn't just fluky. No. Because he does process things super well.
I know people hate this, but I mean, a big part of it is that Shanahan knows how to take care of his quarterback.
Sure.
He knows how to put him in the best place possible.
Got great weapons.
He's not doing him Steve. If he's playing for Steve Spurrier and it's fun and gun and they're not blocking anybody, he's going to struggle.
Yeah.
But Shanahan does amazing. They run the ball incredibly. They have a run scheme that's incredible. And Shanahan's an offensive genius that's going to put him in. And let's not forget, he's got great skill players around him, too.
He's got Tebow and Ayuk
exactly.
and Kittle.
He's got great skill players around him. He's got McCaffrey, one of the greatest skill players in the game today.
I like Juszczyk a lot. I think Juszczyk is super good.
He's one of the best prop bets.
Yeah.
Prop bet all throughout the playoffs, over half reception, over 7.5 yards receiving. That dude's money. And got him cut last time, not this past time, but the time before, scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl at like plus 700. Yeah.
Well,
love Juszczyk. Love him.
Speaking of prop bets,
love that guy. Yeah.
Your NCAA is trying to get rid of him.
Well, does it really apply to us? Because you can't do it in Iowa.
No.
You can't do prop bets on college schools in Iowa anyway. So we're used to that.
They're one of 10 states that have banned it already. Ohio,
and they had it in the initial legislation. That was the big argument in the initial legislation. And then in Nebraska, they put it in the legislation as well.
Yeah.
That no Nebraska sports would be able to be bet on.
Yeah.
So
but nationally, it's still a thing some
sure.
places.
Yep.
And the NCAA's, especially after, I don't know if you saw the Jonte Porter thing in the NBA.
Yeah. That's stupid.
And it's
so stupid.
It's the dumbest
You're
thing.
You're going to get caught.
Yeah.
You're going to get caught, dude. You're not going to get away with anything.
But I was telling this to DB.
Yeah.
The fact that guys are getting caught is kind of the argument for legal gambling, right? Because if you don't have it above board, it's way easier to get away with. You're not. You know how hard it would be to shave points over more than a few games?
You can't anymore.
If
you never could, actually, but yeah.
You know what I mean, though? Like, it would be so much harder now than it would have been back in the day when, it's a little more under the table.
Oh, man, that was the biggest argument for legalization the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, you've got $1 billion being gambled already illegally. Some of that money is going to illegal organizations overseas. You got terrorist organizations using that money, going to drug money. And, of course, all that stuff's happening. And the tax part of it. But the big thing was, if we legalize this, it's going to be easier for us to be able to legalize this and make sure that things are
regulated.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, exactly.
We've got, as I mentioned, a good show coming up here today. We are going to talk a little bit more NFL draft later as well. Of course, we will get to the Sweet 16. We're going to talk a little about the Jet Awards coming up.
Yeah, Galla's 1 week away.
A week from today, if you don't know. Michael is the executive director of the Jet Award for the best returner in college football. So we'll get a little insight on what's going on there. And you do a legacy winner too, which I'm excited about.
Yes, a
as
Nebraska
well.
guy this year. Yep.
And I know I'm going to make another on-air plea to see if we can get Peter Warwick in the house one of these years.
I'm not going to lie to you. I have been working so hard to get next year's legacy award. It's so hard to get a hold of players. I've done everything I can. And there's 2 guys I'm targeting.
Yeah.
Peter Warwick is one and Santana Moss is the other.
Oh,
and
both would be great.
I cannot get anybody to call me back, email me back.
Yeah.
I've been working on it for a month.
I'm tired. I want to go to school.
I'm gonna specifically help on Peter Warwick and see what I can do.
Do you have his number? That would really help.
I think I might know somebody.
I've contacted people who know him pretty well and give me his number, and he doesn't
answer.
Doesn't take text.
I'm just gonna spam him on Instagram until he responds to you.
So I did send him some stuff on Instagram, but nothing helped me out yet. So
I'm just gonna. Well, and he's got a charity and stuff too. Maybe he'll appreciate the foundation part of it.
I went through that too.
You know,
charity. Dude, I've tried, bro.
Come on, Peter Warwick.
I've got our keynote speaker for next year.
Yeah,
so I'm very excited about. It's a Todd Blackledge actually.
Oh, nice. That's a good
I'm
one.
Excited about. His Big Ten ties, Kansas City ties.
Yeah,
all that.
absolutely.
I'm excited about that. But
it's exciting.
Getting the legacy guy for 2025 has been very difficult.
All right, listen. I know Peter Warwick is definitely listening to a radio show in Omaha.
I hope so.
On AM 590 ESPN.
Call us, baby.
On ESPN Tri-Cities.
We will embrace it.
Maybe he's catching us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. But Peter Warwick, call my guy Michael.
We want you.
I'll buy a whole table just for me to enjoy myself and watch Peter Warwick. He's one of my irrational loves.
Really?
Love Peter Warwick.
It is a little irrational. You were living here, correct?
I've always lived here.
Okay.
I do like Florida State.
Oh, okay.
All right. But I love Peter Warwick.
Yeah.
That has been my dude forever. He played a little indoor football at the very end.
Yeah.
In the same league that the Beef were in.
Oh, really?
And he played for Bloomington for like a year.
Oh, okay.
And apparently he didn't need the game checks, and so they were just stuffed in his locker. And he never cashed.
That's hilarious.
He's like, it's like $200 a game. What am I going to do with
exactly right? Yeah, I don't know. Give it to me. Damn it.
That's Michael Zero. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's Michael Severe. I'm Ravi Lulla. Michael's in for DB this morning. We're on the Pillar Exterior stage, and we're halfway through that first hour. I will say, Michael, I'm a little disappointed in myself. Usually I'm the best dressed one on the stage here.
I have a meeting to go to at 11:30.
It's okay. I'm
not ready. I have jeans on, by the way, in case.
That's okay. It's the collar shirt. You bust out the collar. People get
Are you guys going?
People get a little sideways on you.
Yeah.
No, normally I'll dress a little nicer. Just
what's who's the emblem? Who's that?
This is Carolina University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Home of
Wake Forest and Chris Paul.
And business-wise?
Oh, what's in Winston-Salem?
Krispy Kreme, I believe.
Oh, really?
Pretty sure Krispy Kreme.
I was assuming you were just talking about the cigarettes. Isn't there Winston?
We had a conversation about that earlier, about the fact that only about 10% of the population still smoke real cigarettes. Down from 40% in 1979.
I would say at one point it was, you go far enough back, it was over half.
Oh, yeah, easily. Yeah. And then we got 79 was kind of the term
when they started.
They had the thing with the 7 companies go in front of, and they basically admit that things are bad. So since that era, it's dropped down to 19% going into the 21st century. And I think it's 10 real cigarettes.
You don't see it a lot anymore.
No, you don't see real cigarettes being smoked much at all.
When I went to
a lot of vapes.
When I went to my first NASCAR event, it was the Winston Cup, and they were basically just giving you cartons of cigarettes when you walked in.
Winston's, baby. I never smoked cigarettes. I just never liked the smell or anything. I smoked some cigars.
I like cigars a lot.
When I put a little bit of a pipe.
Pipes smell incredible.
Incredible. I did that for a little while. Actually, one of the podcasts I listen to is a pipe smoking podcast.
Really?
I don't smoke anymore,
but
I listen to the podcast.
Just like
I love the conversation, and so I listen to that once every couple of weeks. But I don't drink. I haven't drank since 2002. So literally, I have no fun. That's the end of that question. I have no fun.
Oh, I see.
I'll smoke cigars. I like cigars a lot, and then if I get a certain level of drunk,
okay,
I will have a cigarette.
Ooh, I know people like that. That's Bill Simmons. Bill Simmons is drunk, is cigarette smoking drunk guy playing
like blackjack in Vegas. Yeah,
exactly.
No, yeah. I've got some friends that smoke. I might know all of the 10%, to be honest.
All smoke cigarettes.
I have several friends that still smoke cigarettes, but I'll go out with them sometimes.
Yeah.
And then when we have drinks, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go out for a cigarette." I was like, I get to a certain point where I was like, "All right, I'm coming."
Yeah, when I have friends for years got together to watch the draft, we would go different cities, been to Philly, all over the place, and we would go. And one of the things we'd always do is we'd get cigars, and that was part of the night. We'd go either a cigar bar or just hang out on the stoop of my buddy's house in Philadelphia and just smoke our cigars. That's the one time of the year I would still do it.
Yeah, I don't have to be drinking to smoke cigars. I really enjoy cigars, but that's another story for another day, I suppose. I wanted to get into this offer that the Big Three made Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
Because Ice Cube came out and said yesterday, who runs the Big Three, it's a 3-on-3 league if you're not aware, that not you, I'm talking.
No, I get, yeah. The thing I remember it mostly because Allen Iverson started in there. Remember?
Yeah, there was
played
the first couple years. There was a bunch of old timers. I think there's still some.
Yeah,
but that would play in this league, which I actually think is sort of an interesting idea. But they made a $5 million offer to Caitlin Clark to come play in the Big Three, and I think it was for 10 games.
People love the long shots.
I don't know if it's for the whole season. I thought I saw somewhere that was for 10 games, which would be, that's a great, that's a great paycheck for Caitlin Clark.
Pretty good.
And it's honestly, even if it's for the whole season, that's a better paycheck than she's getting anywhere.
True that. Yeah.
So
although in endorsements, if you include her shoe contract, she's going to make more than that.
But in terms of just basketball salary, she's not making that anywhere in the world.
Nowhere.
And I know the salaries have gotten a little better in the WNBA, but she has to think about this, right?
My answer to this question is always the same. If you are a true competitor, your number one goal is to play at the highest level.
Yeah.
You want to play against the best competition to prove yourself. That is not the highest level. It's not the best competition. I just don't even think it's a discussion. You don't even have the discussion, in my opinion. Money is so important to so many people. I never want to say that it's not, because so many people are in poverty. But at the same time, she's not wanting for money. She's fine.
Yeah.
And she's going to be great and be better than 10% of the population. 90% of the population. She's going to be at 10%. I look at it and I say she wants to play at the highest level. She wants to play competition. She wants to be considered the best of all time. Just don't mess around with this.
All right.
I wouldn't mess around with it. I wouldn't personally, and I don't think she will either. I think she's too competitive.
You think so?
I think she's too competitive. She wants to play against, she wants to be able to, there's what, you say there's 10, somewhere between 7 and 10 elite players in the WNBA?
That's probably right.
Like a basketball fan probably knows their name because either how they played in college or playing in WNBA.
Yeah, that's probably
There's not more than, I don't think there's more than that.
No, I think you're in the neighborhood.
So now she walks in with a chance to be one of those 10.
Yeah.
I don't see why you would choose to do anything but that.
Because $5 million is a lot of money.
Again, for us,
no, I know
it's a lot of money. She's doing fine. She's got commercials everywhere. She's not wanting for any cash. From what I understand, she grew up in a family that were fine.
That did what's fine. Yeah.
She's never struggled financially. I don't think that. There are people that would probably run for that.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
yeah, I think so. But I don't think
I'll take it.
Caitlin Clark. I know a lot of people would take it. Bo would take it.
Oh, do you think it? Like, if it didn't go well, do you think that hurts her long term?
Oh, heck yes.
So that's the argument against doing it.
What is the line from Batman, right? You're a hero.
You live long enough to be the villain,
right? She has lived already long enough to be the villain.
Yeah, people.
She went from last year, early in the season. I remember actually 2 years ago, I was working in Papillion still, and my boss was a former college basketball player at Doane. And we would talk, and I would say, dude, you got to let your kids who are little basketball players watch this girl play. She can hoop. And she is one of those who she is. I didn't say Steph Curry, but she is like a New York City point guard in a way. You know, she's a brother. She's going through her life. She's going behind it. She's shooting fadeaways. And so he started watching her. She was lovable. Then last year, still lovable, all the way probably till the tournament. Then there was some people. Now, in many ways, she's the villain. Especially since they let her get away with things they don't let other people get away with.
For sure.
If you let a woman,
she gets the superstar treatment.
Push somebody off.
Yeah, you get the little chicken wing out there.
And not just a chicken wing, like the breasts, the leg, neck, everything.
The whole rotisserie.
The whole thing. If you allow somebody to do that, people are going to get mad.
Yeah,
exactly.
People get super mad about that. And I get it. I do.
Yeah, so whatever she does, if she did bad, it would be worse than other people doing it.
And it'd be worse than the upside of the $5 million, probably.
Definitely. The last thing, the number one thing you have is your reputation.
Yeah.
Right? Above everything else. You can talk about money and relationships and everything else, but in the end, what they're going to remember is her reputation, her legacy.
Yeah.
And you don't want to ruin your legacy before it even starts.
Yeah, that's fair. And I also, I kind of wonder, I wonder what it means or what it would mean for the women's game. And maybe I'm thinking too much about this, but, I wonder if it, because a lot of times people will be like, oh, well, how would she do against men or whatever? And like, it's a conversation that sort of sets the women's game back because they're separate entities, right? And so I wonder if that's part of the equation too. It'll be like, well, if I do this, I sort of justify that conversation. Mm-hmm. And even if she does well, she's still justifying the conversation.
It's a little bit like when Nancy Lieberman-Klein went and played for the Globetrotters. She was the best player in women's basketball by far. Mm-hmm. Everybody knew her. So she goes to play for the Globetrotters because it's more of a way to people sell tickets, mm-hmm. And was it good for her career? I don't know. But it wasn't like it is now. There was no Twitter. There was no social media. There was no everyday video of it. You had to go watch the Globetrotters with her playing at a place.
She also had fewer options in terms of
she had to go
career,
overseas.
Right?
Yeah, she had to go overseas, yeah.
So there wasn't, if this was happening pre-WNBA and there was some 3-on-3 league for some reason, it makes way more sense, right? Because you don't have the professional outlets.
Is it a women's 3-on-3 league you're talking about right now?
No, I'm saying if Big Three existed, the NBA existed, the WNBA doesn't exist, and Caitlin Clark gets an offer like this, it makes way more sense than when she has a current professional outlet.
I still would not, if I was her, go play in a men's league. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of great women's players over the years. I covered Louisiana Tech closely. I was allowed
which was a wagon.
They were incredible. And when I played on the media team, mm-hmm. that we played against them just for fun. Tanisha Jackson was the point guard for that team. She made us all look like fools. Mm-hmm. I obviously wasn't a college basketball player. There were some guys in that media up there in Monroe that had played Division II. One guy played at one of the Arkansas schools, Monticello, I think. It was incredible. She was amazing. At the same time, what would happen. She'd get her shot blocked. She'd get bullied a little bit. Even with the open game of the 3-on-3, it wouldn't be good.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be good. As good as she is.
Yeah, there's a physicality difference.
I watch Cheryl Swoops do it.
Yeah.
And Cheryl Swoops, no offense against Caitlin Clark, in my opinion, better basketball player.
Cheryl Swoops
was the
incredible.
Greatest women's basketball player I ever watched and saw her in person. Mm-hmm. I'd take her. She still couldn't play with the men. She tried too.
Yeah.
The little pickup stuff with Michael Jordan's group in North Carolina. It's not good.
That's Michael Clear. I'm Ravi Lulla. We've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next year on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's Michael Severe. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube from the Pillar Exterior stage here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We had some rule changes in the NFL.
Yes.
A couple days ago.
Yes.
One fairly big one, and then I guess it's not a rule change, but they're going to play a couple games on Christmas on a Wednesday.
Yes.
And
hump day football.
It's they keep making it harder and harder to try and be like, hey, we care about safety. I know they never did, but like they don't even care about the optics anymore.
No, not
at all. Like, hey, you're going to play on a Wednesday.
Have you seen the numbers? The last times they played on Christmas Day,
they're enormous.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And people want to get away from their family by that time anyway. So put some football on.
You do a Christmas Eve thing, you'll be fine. But and Goodell's answer was, well, it's only going to happen when it's on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Like the weird timing is only going to be on a Wednesday.
Yeah. No, I don't. I have no problem. The thing I'm excited about is that
you don't have to watch the NBA.
The kickoff. The only time I watch an NBA game is usually Christmas. It really is.
It's the only thing on.
It's on and it's like in the background, but it's only on for a short amount of time because eventually when everything's done and we're done eating, my wife puts on the 24-hour marathon of Christmas Story. So that's on the big TV.
Yeah.
And so I'm not even watching then, but that's the one time I really ever watch any NBA anymore, especially a full game. That's not even.
That's not happening.
Yeah. But the kickoff stuff I'm excited about because we've done so many things for safety. And look, I want the game to be safe. I don't want the game to ever go away. And we've done so many things in terms of getting rid of the wedge and making sure and not allowing guys to have run up and all that to eliminate the huge collisions. Mm-hmm. But what's happened because of all these rule changes is that we've limited the amount of explosive kickoff plays and we've eliminated the amount of explosive punt return plays as well. This way, the first UFL who tried this years ago, and then the XFL and USFL and all them doing this kicking off from the 30, bringing everybody up and not having a run up, it's going to make for more explosive kickoff returns. Because if you beat the first guy, there's a good chance you're gone.
Grass.
So what they have to do is people are going to have to figure out a way to drop a couple guys back.
Yeah.
Maybe even kind of bring them in kind of a horseshoe so that they're there just in case for safety.
You almost want to have guys like drop into coverage.
You got to double back. Yes, exactly.
Like they would.
Don't be too aggressive.
No, like a defensive back, like backpedaling almost into coverage.
Yeah. But the guy's coming at you and you're backpedaling.
Yeah, like you're in a bad spot.
Cordero Patterson you're not going to get him.
Yeah, you're in a bad spot.
Yeah, exactly.
So it could be interesting. So if you're not aware, basically the kicker stays at the same spot.
30. Yep.
They move everybody else on the kicking team to within 5 yards of the receiving team, where the receiving team lines up.
Yes. I believe it's the 35 and 30.
I think so. It might be 30 and 25. I'm not totally sure, but I think it's 35 and 30. I think you're right.
That's it.
And so you're 5 yards apart, so you don't have the high-speed collisions. That's what they're trying to avoid, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And so instead of...
And nobody can move until the guy receives the kickoff.
Is it when he catches it or when he kicks it?
No. Nobody can move except for the kicker.
Until the catch.
Okay. That's when everybody can start going.
So it's like a free throw. It has to hit the rim.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're going to have an interesting situation of trying to cover that.
Yes.
It also dramatically incentivizes trying to kick the ball out, like a touchback now.
Oh, heck yeah.
But it also incentivizes trying to bring it out
mm-hmm.
because you've got an opportunity. Like you said, you get past that first line.
You beat somebody.
You're in pretty good shape there.
Yep.
With that being said, you mentioned Cordero Patterson. I can't say his name. Is it Cordero or
Cordero?
Cordero. There we go.
That's what I think. Yeah, that's how I've always said it.
I have no idea. The guy that played at Tennessee a long time ago, Patterson.
He did, and he played for a lot of teams after that.
Immediately after this gets adopted, the Steelers are like, all right, we're signing that guy.
Yeah. I think is it 10? He has the record for kickoff
returns.
Right?
Yes, I believe it's 10.
Yeah, so that's pretty good.
So they get him immediately. I'm really interested to see how that plays out.
Me too.
And see how people strategize the kick coverage.
Yeah. I love teams that love to get big plays on special teams, that concentrate on it. I don't like teams that make it safe.
It's more teams do that in college. Try to make their like hay in special teams.
And it doesn't happen that much as it used to happen.
No, but I mean, like Virginia Tech built their entire program on that. Basically.
Oh yeah.
Florida State did too, to a certain extent. Like there was a huge part of some of these teams coming up because it was largely ignored for a long time.
Yeah, and Virginia Tech, and it's not as great as others. Texas had more block punts than Virginia Tech did over those years where we talk a lot about Virginia Tech, but they concentrated on blocking kickoffs, blocking field goals, blocking punts, and returning everything.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of teams now get the ball 25-yard line. Do I really want to?
The risk reward is out of kilter now.
Not great. And so if you give somebody a chance to be able to make a return and make a big one, I love it.
Yeah,
more.
Absolutely. I'm excited about it.
I hope it happens in college.
That would be interesting.
I hope it happens in college. I really do. So last year, I chart these obviously because of the award we give out. But last year, there was actually an uptick in kickoff and punt return touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
There was an uptick. It was more than it was last year, and it was more than 2023, 22, and 21.
Mm-hmm.
Not combined, but just those individual years.
Yeah.
But if you go back to like 15, 16, 17, 18, many more kickoff and punt return touchdowns in college football because the rules hadn't completely changed. When they changed, it dropped off, and now it's kind of bounced back a little bit because I think more teams are taking a chance to bring it out. But I would like to see it obviously get more.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for you, obviously, but also
nobody
had
more than 3 this year.
It's more fun. Like that's a huge part of the game, and it's
no individual player had more than 3 this year.
Right? Yeah. So that'll be interesting. We'll see how that starts to look and see how teams adapt to that in the NFL. The other thing that got passed was the hip drop.
Yes,
the hip
drop tackle. Yeah.
Well, I would say what's the cringe for?
I cringe because I hate the tackle.
Yeah.
I hate seeing people get hurt, especially if it's a player on your team or if it's Florida State and Jordan Travis. What happened to him? That just completely, obviously, derailed their chances
ruined
for
their
national
season.
championship.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're talking about a defender having to tackle one of the greatest athletes on the planet, usually, and he got to figure out a way to bring him down. I got to figure out a way. And now you're telling me that I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, and now I can't grab a guy and bring him down using my weight,
using my body weight. Yeah.
So what are you doing? Like, what do you have left to tackle? Don't hit him high. You don't want to hurt somebody's knees. What do you do? Like
trip him.
Can't trip. That's a 15-yard penalty.
No, I mean like with the hand swipe, you know.
Just got to sweep it. Yeah, I guess that's usually the last line of defense is the dive.
Is the hand
I don't
swipe.
know what you do now. It's going to be really hard on defenders.
It's going to be really hard to tackle people. I do get it though. Like I understand.
Oh, it's a horrible injury
because it's a terrible. It's
Mark
a high.
Andrews lost like 10 weeks.
Yeah, it's a super high risk tackle for the offensive player. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, are they only calling it if you land on their legs?
I think if you grab them around the waist and you drop your weight and you turn, it's going to be a penalty.
Okay.
That's the combination. It's where you grab them, it's dropping your weight and spinning them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what usually causes the problem. If you just drop your weight for the most part, usually they can clear everything.
They can clear their legs
when
out.
you twist, that's going to take the lead.
Basically, one leg
foot
gets pinned.
Yeah.
So that's the problem here. So I think you will still see. I mean, it is. It's going to be harder and harder to tackle people in the NFL. It's been that way for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So that's if you like offensive football, that's nice.
And everybody does, right?
Yeah.
We all love offensive football. It's the most fun part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
People scoring touchdowns.
Everybody.
But what I want to see are competitive football games.
Yeah.
The sport of football. The second, I believe, most dangerous sport out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like highlight, I think is worse. But other than that, it's football. It's going to be dangerous. You're going to get hurt. You're talking to a guy who's got an artificial knee.
Yeah.
That goes all the way back to high school.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to get hurt. We can't legislate, put rules in to eliminate the injuries. We can't. They got to figure out a way to be able to I don't penalize this penalty during the game. This is one of those where when they go back and review the game, you give them the fine. And then the fine eventually teaches the guys, I can't do this. I've got to change. I don't like calling during the game. I think it's too hard to figure out exactly if it's a penalty or not. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, there's a certain point, and we, because we've got combat sports in this country, right?
Like, sure.
I don't know.
Where you're literally trying to knock somebody out.
Yeah, so I don't know. At some point, do we just have to view football as a combat sport and be hey, this is right? But you know what I mean? Like, but people don't look at it that way. People look at it as a team sport.
It's the second. So the first combat sport was gladiators versus either the Christians or the Christians versus the Lions. That was your first combat sport. The next one truly is football.
Right.
The original football, 1880s, 1890s.
Yeah, people were
dying.
Yeah.
They were getting killed.
Yeah, they had to change a bunch of rules.
Exactly.
Because people were dying.
Change the game. So, yeah, people have to look at it as the ultimate combat sport at this point.
But I don't think
pads.
I don't think people do, though. I don't think people look at it as a combat sport. I think they look at it as, hey, it's hyper physical. But they look at it different than boxing or UFC, I think.
Okay. Yeah, maybe they do. I look at it as being as violent as anything. You have what they always say it. You have 50 to 70 car crashes that happen.
Yeah, over the course of a game, right? But if you view it as a combat sport as opposed to a team sport, then all of a sudden this stuff gets a lot easier because you start to just be like, hey, this is what you're signing up for.
Right.
Yeah. And I
think people know that. The people playing.
I think the people playing know that, but I think the people on the outside are not as accepting of that reality because they want it to be more palatable, because there's a reason. I mean, I know boxing was once the biggest sport in the world, right? But there's
boxing, tennis, horse racing.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot one.
What's that?
Polo.
Boxing, tennis, horse racing. What a time to be alive.
Those are the kings.
Yeah, sports are the king. Yeah. And listen, I like all those sports. That's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. I like boxing. I like boxing and tennis more than horse racing, but that's okay. I'll watch the Kentucky Derby.
Do you know the horse racing, when I was a kid living in New York City, led the newscast?
Really?
Harness racing. Harness racing led the newscast many times. There'd be these huge things at one of the big parks around there in New York, and it'd be like $1 million purse or whatever crazy like that. And the first story in the news would be who won that horse race.
Really?
The harness racing, yeah. It was that big of a sport. I'm talking so 73 when I was 4, 75, 76, 77, that area.
Yeah, and you don't even see the harness racing hardly anymore.
No, you don't really see it anymore at all. The only story, what knocked harness racing off the front page for everything?
What's that?
Was the Son of Sam. Summer of 77. That was the first story everywhere for like 3 months.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, that
does make sense.
Yeah.
Coming up next, we're going to talk to Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, get his thoughts on what he's looking for out of spring football and more. That's Michael Zavira. I'm Ravi Lulla. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's Michael Zavira. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're joined now by Mitch Sherman of The Athletic. Mitch, how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm well. I'm impressed with Shane. I've heard that intro several times, but I didn't know that it was all just in preparation for getting to speak with Michael here. And that first clip is applicable not just to Damon, but to you.
I haven't seen him since a cold day in Memorial Stadium.
It's been a long time. You know what I've always liked about you, Mitch, is that you're not afraid, right? You, as we would say where I'm from, you ain't scared. I love how you got into Twitter last night, or X, about the Gretna East game and Buena Vista. You know, because my kid's in the band in Central, I watched a lot of bad football this year and a lot of blowouts from some teams that just can't field teams. But what you said, I thought was perfect, because one team has got to play. I mean, whether it's baseball or any sport, the other team can't compete. I mean, it's tough. It sucks. But it's not about those teams. It's about the structure, right? It's about the way OPS is right now and the imbalance in Class A. It's really sad to watch.
It is. And I was tweeting from 30,000 feet last night. So who knows what my mindset was on the way back from vacation. And now I'm headed to Lincoln to watch an open period of football practice. So jumping right back in. But yeah, it's you know how I am with those Gretna teams. Sure. I mean, it's more about friends and family and that kind of thing with me when I tweet about Gretna than it is about being a journalist. But you know, those lines cross sometime, and I saw some criticism coming from the World Herald story about Gretna East beating Buena Vista 40-1. And it's like, look, I was at the Benson game when this was the first game in Gretna East school history. And I know a lot of the kids on that team, and they were not trying to run it up. They were not taking extra bases after the first inning. Actually, they stopped with like one out in the first inning. And it's just really unfortunate. I mean, it's a massive disparity between the teams, and on the one end, the high end, you have a team that is a first year high school with no seniors on that team. Mm-hmm. So something is just way off. It's not just in baseball. We see it play out because baseball is not a sport where you can set a running clock in the second half, and end up with these ridiculous scores that aren't good for anyone. But to think that their coach or that those players were trying to rub it in or run it up against Benson or Buena Vista is totally off. They don't get enjoyment out of winning games like that. They should be able to enjoy their first season as a high school, and they are. But in those two games, it's not real fun. So that's I just thought, and I have thought, and decided to voice it, that there's nothing wrong with either team. To be frank, it's the system that has somehow allowed this imbalance to occur. And I even think that the classification, it's time to look at the classification and put teams competitively against each other that should be competitively against each other.
Yeah, Mitch, because I mean, I don't know what the alternative. Are they supposed to just stand there and take pitches and like hope they strike out? Like, I don't know what the solution, like outside of a systemic solution, right? If you're in the game, what is Gretna East supposed to do?
Even sitting in the seats at the Benson game a few weeks ago, they scored 20 plus runs in the first inning, and you know, it's all kinds of dropped fly balls and everything that could go wrong is going wrong for Benson. And I mean, I don't know their situation, but you can tell that the majority of those kids have not played baseball, and the Gretna East kids, they've all played since they were 7 or 8 years old, even though it's a first year program, and some of them played for Gretna High last year. And there were people in the stands even suggesting, like, can they just like wander off the base and allow the pitcher to throw over to second or third and just tag the guy, or just start walking to the. And I don't think that's. I would feel uncomfortable about that.
Yeah, is that any better?
The coaches can agree to stop it, right, Mitch? Can't the coaches agree to stop it? That happens occasionally.
I think so. I believe you can. I mean, I was educated by some high school people last night that the NSAA follows the NFHS, the national governing body rules on having a mercy rule But yeah, you could certainly just agree to say, okay, this is over.
Enough,
but
yeah.
what? And I guess at a point that's probably the best thing to do, but that's not helping the players on the bottom of that get any better. They need the experience too. So if you just stop it after 20 minutes because it's out of control, hey, I mean, that's also not a good outcome or the solution.
You said it's in other sports too. My concern is in football.
Well,
I'm worried about guys getting hurt, right?
Yeah.
I'm worried about. I watched Central a couple of years ago. They were really bad, and they went against Elkhorn South, and I was afraid for those kids. That was the same way watching Benson play this year against multiple teams. I don't want to see guys get hurt. So I don't know if you can do. In Texas they went to the Big 5A, then they went to Big 6 and took the really big high schools and separated from the others. I don't know if there's enough of them here locally, but maybe that's something you could do at one point.
Yeah, you need to find a way to help those schools that are suffering improve, and they're not improving.
Sure,
you remember the Benson opener this year again in football against Lincoln North Star when it was 70-something to nothing at halftime. That's not helping anyone improve, and there needs to be a system out there that helps them have a good experience playing high school sports and allow them to improve.
Right.
We're talking with Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, let's change gears here to Nebraska spring football. I know you're headed down there this morning. What are some of the things you're looking for, or what are some of the things maybe you think we might be able to learn from this spring period?
From the entire spring?
Yes.
Well, we're going to learn a lot, I think, about Matt Rule's second team. My immediate level of interest, or my immediate interest, my eyes today are going to go to the quarterbacks, because of the two true freshmen at the top there. I think ideally for Nebraska, Heinrich Harburg is able to play some kind of a role where he's helping the offense in a multifaceted spot, but he's not at the top of the depth chart, obviously, at quarterback. That Dylan Raiola does what everyone expects and wants him to do, but it actually has to happen. He actually has to go out and grasp this offense, which I think he will do. But again, true freshmen are unpredictable, and I think we'll learn something this spring. The coaches will learn it first when they see these players scrimmage here fairly soon, in a week or so. Mm-hmm. And then we're all going to see something. I don't know exactly what, but we'll see something on April 27th. And I think by the end of the spring, we'll have an idea of whether this is going to be the kind of quarterback situation that Nebraska needs it to be in the fall, or if they're going to have to go back into the portal and find something to help in the short term. I know everyone's hoping that that's not the case and that Raiola is ready to go, and he looks physically very good. He's improved his condition since arriving on campus, but it's got to work. It's got to play itself out. Otherwise, around the team, I think it's about finding depth. I think it's about the athletes starting to rise to the top, and that's going to always. It has been, and it will continue to be a priority for Matt Rule and his coaching staff in building this roster and putting together a two deep, is to find ways to coax the football skills out of the athletes. They recruit athletes like nobody else, and I'm not saying that other schools don't have athletes, but Nebraska prioritizes athleticism and track times, speed, and jumping ability in a place that is not exactly the norm in college football. It's above that. They want to bring in raw talent and turn them into players. And I think we'll learn some things this spring about how far the players that they did that with in their first recruiting class have come, and even the second recruiting class, because there's 23 of them on campus this spring.
I thought, Mitch, there are three things they needed to accomplish. One of them, you brought up quarterbacks, but to figure out if they're okay going into game one with just those three guys, two true freshmen and a guy with 8 starts. Do they have to go try to find somebody in the portal? Can they figure that out? And then the other one was, they have a weird grouping of wide receivers, portal guys to true freshmen, to returning freshmen, to guys we don't talk about like Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, and then the other one was the next level for those defensive linemen outside of Nash and Ty, like what they can take to the next level. Out of those three, which one would you think you look for the most this spring?
Well, I already talked about their quarterbacks, and that's going to be the thing I look at the most. Of the other two, they're both hugely important. I would say, I would agree with you, Michael, that I'm looking for some kind of organization among the wide receivers. I think the D linemen are going to be okay. If for no other reason than I've talked to Tony White about this, about what his mindset is with Cam Lenhart, with Prince Will, with Riley Van Poppel.
Yep.
These are all players who, as true freshmen, were off to very promising starts to their careers. And, he talked about avoiding a sophomore slump. So I think they've got, and Terrence Knighton's going to take care of that. I think they've got their fingers on the pulse of that. So I'm not necessarily concerned. I think those guys are going to take, if they stay healthy, take it to the next level, and they'll have a very good D line when you mix those guys with Jamari Butler, with Ty Robinson, with Nash Hetmacher. It's going to be a strength of the team. Wide receiver, there's still questions. There have been questions about wide receiver at Nebraska. It's just been such the fluidity at that spot has been lacking for so many years. And here we are again with this mishmash of players, like you said. I think Jamal Banks is a huge key, and it was no coincidence that he was the first player to speak to the media last week when Nebraska had its preview press conference of this spring practice, and here come the players to, some of that's got to do with class schedules and who's available, but you don't just put a first-year player up there unless you're expecting him to do big things. And I don't mean just big things as far as the yardage and the touchdowns that he catches. It's about being someone who can bring that room together. And I think they expect that, and I think they found a good guy in Banks to be able to do that. He takes pressure off Malachi Coleman and Jalen Lloyd and Jaden Doss and Demetrius Bell. They have young talent, and they rave about Demetrius Bell as a wide receiver. He's part of the reason that Nebraska was able to take Jeremiah Charles and Bryce Turner and put them over on the defensive side, because they looked at Bell and they said in practice last year and said, all right, we've really got something here. So you mix him with the freshmen who did play, and some of the players in the middle, like Alex Bullock. We'll see what they get from Isaiah Nayer, the Texas transfer. I think they like him a lot too, but he just hasn't risen to the surface yet in the way that Jamal Banks has.
And Ja'Cory Barney.
A lot of people like Ja'Cory Barney.
Electric. Get him the ball somehow. Figure out a way.
He's one of those athletes that that I talked about earlier.
Yep.
Mitch, as we're talking about these different position groups, and then I found myself wanting to ask you about running backs, and I will, but I also think it's kind of crazy that none of us have mentioned offensive line yet. It almost seems like the place where we feel the best, which is a weird thought to have considering where we were last year.
On the offensive side,
right.
I mean, I feel better about just about everywhere on defense than I do offensive line. But on the offensive side, because quarterbacks are so young. We just talked about wide receiver, and the challenges that they have there to become one as a group. Tight ends is a good spot. You have experience. But it's also a lot of youth and a lot of athletic promise, and then you have a big piece in Carter Nelson, who is still to come and join this group in the summer. And then running back. There's some injuries this spring. Not necessarily new injuries, but players who are returning from injury and rehab, and they just don't want those guys taking hits. So you won't see much of Gabe Irvin and Ramir Johnson. But there aren't as many questions at offensive line. Micah Mazuka, the transfer from Florida,
and Baylor.
And Baylor. I want to see what they have in him. He didn't necessarily take to it the way that Jamal Banks did, coming in right away and we heard an update from Matt Rule on him in February, where you could tell that Rule was looking for more out of Mazuka than what Nebraska got right off the bat. I think he was also a little bit late arriving to the winter semester in January, or the spring semester in January. So he may have they need him to take a jump and be somebody who is a solid piece. He's been a starter in the SEC and in the Big 12, so you'd expect that at one of those guard spots that he's going to solidify things. But again, like Raiola, it actually has to happen for this team. But yeah, the pieces that they have with Bryce Benhart and Ben Scott as anchors of that group, it's very comforting. They're finally to a place where they're older and they're experienced, and they have players who have done it with some success at the Big Ten level. So I'm optimistic about the offensive line. I think they took a big step under Donnie Raiola last year, and can take another one this year. And if it's a similar kind of progression, this can be a team within the Big Ten that it can be an offensive line that is in the upper half, I would say, of the Big Ten.
Mitch, I do want to ask about those running backs. Obviously, Dowdell getting a lot of the headlines as the transfer in, the high-profile guy from Oregon. I know a lot of people are starting to say, hey, maybe Emmett Johnson was a little bit better than we gave him credit for last year. You mentioned Gabe Irvin and Ramir Johnson kind of working their way back from injuries. I guess, what are you going to be looking at Dowdell specifically just because we haven't seen him yet, or what are you looking for from that group? Because I think people are a little desperate for Nebraska to have at least a standout running back at this point again, since it's been a hot minute.
Yeah, it's hard to know who that's going to be. I mean, it's not going to. Ramir Johnson's been in that role. That's not what they're going to ask him to do.
Right.
Any of the rest of them, and Ramir's going to have a big place on this team. It's just not going to be as the 25 carry a game running back. That's not his strong suit. He's another guy like Harburg in a much different body who can just do a lot of things for you offensively if the pieces around him come together to allow that to happen. And that's about depth. But yeah, any of the rest of them, I'm interested to see. We won't see much of Gabe Irvin this spring, but Dowdell, as the Oregon transfer, you want to see what he's got. Didn't play much with the Ducks last year, but was an elite recruit coming out the year before. Interested for sure in seeing what Emmett Johnson has done to improve his game. He was very good. Obviously, he received that playing time because of injuries to others. Yeah. So if you have a crowded group of running backs, what's he going to do to make himself stand out? I'm interested to see that. I think it's a big spring for him, a big spring in kind of carving out what his role is in the future of this program starting this year. That's going to be determined in large part this spring by how he shows when he's out there, and it's not really like, there aren't many options, and Emmett Johnson is the one that's healthy, so let's throw him out there and see how he does. That's not the case. I think he can still be successful in this spot, but he's obviously got to win those reps and earn that playing time in practice. And then the guy not to sleep on is Quentin Ives.
Yeah.
Much like Demetrius Bell last year, working with the scout team as a redshirting player, he's somebody that they're high on that maybe the observers of Nebraska football don't really know yet because you haven't seen him. You've only heard coaches talk about him, but he's right near the top of the list of the players that I've heard the most buzz about that we didn't get to see play in game action last year.
Hey, Mitch, real quick, a big conversation with bringing in Troy Dannen and, of course, elevating Dr. Gold and all of that is stability in the front office kind of college football and for Nebraska. Do you feel good about that, or we're not going to know about that for a while if everything is back to being stable?
It's a good question. I mean, we won't know on Jeffrey Gold officially. I mean, he's in the background and was in the background very much so on Tuesday at the introduction for Troy Dannen, and I wasn't there.
Right,
But I tuned in. I paid attention. I got a vibe of what's going on, and I'll dig more into that as I get back from vacation here this week and next week. But my sense was that Dr. Gold, the priority candidate to be the university assistant president, was laying low at that. So after his period as the priority candidate is up, and assuming that he gets approved and gets that job on a permanent basis, then we'll have a better sense of how much he wants to be directly involved in athletics. You saw it with Ted Carter. You saw it with Chris Kaborik as the interim, that they very much want to be a part of that world, and they're eager to be the person who is in charge of everything, and embrace that role as the president to whom the athletic director directly reports. So I'm curious with Jeffrey Gold, coming from the medical side, if that's going to be his way of going about it. That's still the way that the structure is set up.
Yeah.
But what will Gold be like in that role? I do think, because of his history and his background and his work within the university at UNO and at UNMC, that he does provide stability, and that's something that Nebraska very much needs at those levels of administrative leadership. And I think from my first observations, Troy Dannen does that too. So yeah, they may be getting back to a place where there's more stability, and I think that they're in a position, from the president to the regents to the president to the AD, and the AD allowing the football coach and the other coaches to do what they need to do to be successful. It looks like Nebraska's getting back to a position where there is alignment and stability, but we'll see over time.
Well, and even all the way up to the governor's office, apparently, as well. Mitch, we appreciate the time. Enjoy the time at practice today, and we will catch up with you again soon.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Good
Mitch.
to talk to you.
That's Mitch Sherman from The Athletic.
I want to talk a little about Dannen when we come back.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Michael Bruntz coming up here in a minute, but we will have plenty of time to talk Troy Dannen. And I do want to ask you, because you've got the news background, I do want to ask you about the governor's involvement in this, because it makes me a little uneasy with the AD search specifically. I get that Pillen has a background that you could maybe justify it, but kind of gives me a little bit of the ick, if I'm being totally honest here.
Gotcha.
And it's not because of who Pillen is. It's just not sure that's the governor's job. I don't know. We can get into that. We'll get into Troy Dannen and more. Coming up next, we've got Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. That's Michael Severe. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as live on the Pillar Exterior stage. That's Michael Severe. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7. Bruntz, what's going on, man?
Not much. How you guys doing?
Oh, we're doing good.
Michael Bruntz, top 1% smartest journalist in Nebraska.
Oh, look at that, Bruntz.
That's what I give him. That's what I think.
Top 1%. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Wow. I was, when Shane said you were sitting in for Damon today, Michael, I got kind of excited, but you're pumping me up. I like that. I need that this early in the morning.
I always tell you, the only reason is because maybe at some point when you guys make a trip back overseas, and maybe we could go with you. That's what my thing was. I just want to go.
He's just trying to travel with you?
trying to travel with him. His wife speaks multiple languages. I'm like, let's go and eat some food. Let's get some street food.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I like it.
Yeah.
Bruntz, as I know we've got spring practice here today, but I want to start with Nebraska baseball. I know that's a sweet spot of yours, but this is a team that has done incredibly well in the non-conference as they, continue to have the super high. I don't know if is it RPI in baseball still? Is that we're still going on RPI, right?
It is. It's old school. It's still RPI.
Warren Nolan rankings. That's what I go by.
They're 17-5. They keep winning. They're having a great start to the season. What are your concerns as they start on Friday with their Big Ten schedule? Because some of those metrics are going to be pretty unfavorable to them as they get into the heart of the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but for Nebraska, just by virtue of playing baseball, their RPI is going to go down.
Yeah,
that's life in the Big Ten. And it's, it kind of is what it is at this point. I mean, Nebraska, all they can control is their non-conference schedule, and they scheduled aggressively. They won the games, which that's been kind of the missing piece the last few years or last decade or so, is they just have not gotten off the strong starts since they've been in the Big Ten. And this team, to their credit, they have. And that's kind of all you can do. And I think, the one thing that will help them, and it's unfortunate that it was as cold as it was this past week, because that
K-State game would have been nice. Yeah,
K-State was going to be really important. They've got Kansas on the schedule still. They've got Creighton coming up. Creighton's RPI is pretty nice right now, so that'll help. But yeah, I mean, it's you play 2 games against New Mexico State, and your strength of schedule goes from top 10 down into it was like the mid-20s. Just by playing that game. So it's tough. And really all you can do as a team in the North is just keep winning. And, I think this team is built to do that. So we'll see if they can do that once they get into the Big Ten.
See, I was looking back, and this is weird, but I was looking for a stat in my old scripts, and I came across this thing I had written up where the battle between Tristan Gebbia and Martinez and who should be the guy. And I'm reading through, I'm looking at some of the stats and stuff, and I'm thinking to myself, it's funny, you look at that race, and you had 2 young quarterbacks, right? And we didn't know what was going to happen at that point, looking back in the summer of 2018. I look now and I go, 2 true freshmen, 1 guy who some people want to see playing tight end. Are you comfortable day 1 of the season going in with this, or do they need to go find somebody just in case, an in-case portal guy that leaves someplace in the spring and maybe add him to the roster?
They will. I think they will pursue a just in case. And to your question, no, I don't feel totally comfortable with this. In spite of, one of those freshmen being highly touted and touted, carrying a big arm. At least we got to see that at Pro Day. So there's at least that. But yeah, I mean, I mean, you mentioned Tristan Gebbia. I think essentially what you're looking for in the portal is Tristan Gebbia, but aged 6 years, right? Like you're looking for somebody that is a kind of a veteran of college football, understands what's going on here, because I think everybody kind of understands that it's about the 2 freshmen more than anything, and is there to, just in case, can be a good guy in the locker room, maybe, has a future in coaching ahead of him and wants to kind of have that experience and, with Matt Rule and his staff. I think those types of guys are out there. And I think that, when you kind of start talking about the spring transfer portal period, guys start looking around and it gets, the options are getting a little bit more scarce. If guys want to move, you kind of you got to take the opportunities when they come. So I think there's going to be somebody out there like that. I don't know who that is right now, but I think that's kind of what's lacking right now, Michael. You're right. In the quarterback room, is you just need somebody that's been around, that's played a little bit, who can kind of fit in pretty seamlessly. And I think that's what they're going to try to pursue.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really unique position they're trying to fill, right? Because you have this guy who, if everything goes right, will never see the field, right? But you want him to be able to fill in if need be and be better than a Heinrich Harburg as, splitting reps at tight end or one of the walk-ons. I mean, like I'm not saying they're not going to get somebody, but that's a tall order to try and figure out.
Yeah, no, it is. And I know everybody gets says, oh, you got NIL and there's not a bottomless pot of money there.
Well, you're not going to pay somebody to not play. Like, you can't convince somebody that wants to play to come here and be like, hey, here's a pile of cash, don't play.
Yeah, I mean, you don't give them a pile of cash, but you give them a little cash. I think that's probably basically, it's like if you're going to get buried on a depth chart somewhere else, come get buried on a depth chart here. I mean, that's the
might have a chance.
That's kind of the pitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
You think we're looking more at like maybe an FCS guy that's trying to make a move up, or like a JUCO guy that maybe wasn't going to get an opportunity somewhere else? Or, I mean, have you thought about at all what the profile of that guy looks like? Because, I mean, it kind of looks like Casey Thompson, right? But obviously that didn't end up happening.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, you got to get somebody that can fit in pretty seamlessly. And I mean, the profile is Tristan Gebbia. I mean, think about what, he was at Nebraska.
Yep.
Was kind of in the mix there. Went to Oregon State and started, had some really bad, injury issues for a couple of years. a really mature kid who, wanted to get into coaching. I mean, that's the profile. I mean, I think that's what you're looking for. I don't know if that person's out there. And I'm sure that there's going to be guys around the country after spring who, kind of come in or kind of look at their situations and kind of see the writing on the wall and maybe, want to move on for whatever reasons. I mean, I think there's the potential that you'll find somebody out there. I think it's more likely to come out of the portal versus, a JUCO guy, because I don't know. I mean, I just don't know if a JUCO guy's not going somewhere to not play. I don't know how much he would play anyways, if that makes sense.
I'm going to give you two of the reasons why Nebraska lost more games than they won last year. One of them was you could point back to special teams, whether it's missed field goals or some issues punting the ball or not being able to return. And then the other one, of course, is finishing drive rate or just being able to score touchdowns opposed to field goals or nothing. Of those two, best chance to be much better this year to win those games they lost?
I think the finishing drives piece of it has the potential to be a little bit better. I'm still a little iffy on the special teams piece of it. That to me is more, the special teams piece of it to me is more about just personnel, and Brian Buschini has been a little bit inconsistent for a couple of years now, and we'll see if they can kind of figure something out to make that work. I think Tristan Alvano will be better as a sophomore than he was as a freshman.
Right.
But I mean, the field position issues with Nebraska, I mean, they feel like they're almost kind of baked in right now. And, you got to kind of find a way to figure that out. But I think that, if you've got a little bit better running game, I think if you, get a little bit more creative in the red zone, and I think they've added guys out of the portal that can help you in those situations. I mean, they didn't have a Jamal Banks on their roster last year that you could just throw a ball to and he'd try to make a contested catch. I mean, they just didn't have that guy. And so I think having, some of the additions they've made will help down there. I think another year of the offensive line being around and hopefully improving together will help that as well. So I would probably lean that. I mean, I think they'll be able to finish off drives a little bit better than they did a year ago. And I mean, you talk about November. I mean, it's not a huge difference that they have to improve on, to kind of make that next step or at least get to 6 wins.
It's Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Bruntz, we appreciate you being flexible today so you can still join us and enjoy practice. I expect a full Zapruder-like breakdown of Dylan Raiola by this evening. And
we already did a little bit of that with Pro Day, so we'll get a little bit of that today.
I love it. Bruntz, we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Bruntz.
Thanks, guys.
That's Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Coming up next, let's get into Troy Dannen a little bit here. Yeah. That's Michael Severe. I'm Ravi, Lulla. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Want to remind you that hands on the wheel, eyes and focus straight ahead. The driver has one job to do, and that is to drive. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. That's Michael Severe. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're here on the Pillar Exterior stage. Troy Dannen there in his opening introductory press conference. Michael, we talked some about it yesterday, obviously, but was there anything to you that particularly stuck out about his comments or any answers to his questions as you're listening to him yesterday?
Well, his knowledge of where Nebraska is and in the Midwest and all that. I want to talk a little bit about, so my wife got her master's degree from Tulane, right? Mm-hmm. So every year when we used to go to New Orleans 2 or 3 times a year. And every year we go to campus and she goes to the bookstore. We walk around. My son actually took a campus tour during last summer, looking towards the college. No way he was going there. It's $80,000 a semester. Oh, no, a year, excuse me. Still a lot. But, so one of the things that I realized is, you start looking at the growth of that campus. And I had pretty good every year going, if you take 6 or 7 months, you really can see differences in places. Yeah. And what he did over his 8 or so years was remarkable. We took that tour last summer. I don't know how many times the guy who was taking us around said, oh, and they just improved this training facility, or they just did this upgrade to the baseball park, or they just did this to something. Sports-wise, he did And by the way, you have a campus that is bordered by St. Charles Avenue, a university, an entire neighborhood, and then another neighborhood. So there's not a lot of places to go.
Boxed in.
Yeah, they're not Nebraska where they can spread it all.
Yeah.
So he had to build or help raise money to build in places that were really tight to get done. And he did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I admire that because even though Tulane is a very expensive place to go to school, they don't have a huge alumni base, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's going from there to a school that's probably got, I would say, 4 times the alumni base that Tulane had here at Nebraska. And Nebraska's not a big alumni base compared to an A&M, which is like 500,000. But giving him more money, giving him more opportunity, and putting him in a place in Nebraska that has the desire to be great at every sport, I think he's the perfect person to pick. You wanted somebody who understands the Midwest a little bit, understands the Big Ten, has been at different levels, can fundraise, and I think more than anything else, understands how important football is to the front door of the university because he made sure that Tulane football was good by the time he left. They beat USC the last year he was there. That's where they got to. And he paid more money to keep Willie Fritz there to get that done. So he understands football is the front door to the university. And so that's one of the things I want to say about him is I saw what he did at Tulane. It's amazing. The fact that he left Washington after a short time, it's inconvenient, but I understand why he did it.
Yeah.
But I think he's a great pick. I don't know if they could have found somebody that fits what Nebraska needs right now more than what they got in Troy Dannen.
Well, and you look at all the things that he did at Tulane, like you were saying. He also, I know, hired a guy that you love in Willie Fritz.
Love Willie Fritz. Love
at
Willie
Tulane,
Fritz.
which is a great hire. I know a lot of people in the know and in the profession are kind of obsessed with Willie Fritz as a football coach.
And it was taking a chance because Willie was considered, whether he was at Georgia Southern or was at Sam Houston State, my alma mater, he was a kind of a more of an option-based, almost a power option kind of. And some people are like, well, that's not going to work at this level. But he modified his offense.
Yeah. So that was obviously a good move by Troy Dannen on that part. Hopefully he doesn't have to hire a football coach in Nebraska. That's kind of what we're but no, it's interesting because he does seem like a really good fit for what Nebraska needs and personality wise.
Yeah.
It does, you talking about all the improvements and stuff does make me immediately think about the stadium project.
Yeah.
Right? Because
and he answered that question.
He did, kind of.
Exactly. Exactly.
Kind of.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, and that was from everything that I've heard, and I know you've got some insight, or at least have given some insight into the situation with Trev leaving and stuff like that, where it does seem like the stadium project was a pretty large point of tension between Trev, the Board of Regents, the overall leadership system,
the fundraisers.
Yeah, at the University
money
of Nebraska.
Yeah.
So I wonder what that looks like moving forward, because I do think the stadium does need some things.
Oh,
right?
Definitely.
Like, I don't think that's a controversial take.
Yeah.
But Damon and I were talking about this yesterday. The sense that I got, and you can tell me if I'm way out of left field here or not, was that Trev was kind of turning it into a vanity project in terms of what he was trying to do, the scope of what he was trying to do, the price tag of what he was trying to do was a little over the top in terms of what was necessary. Am I totally off there? Or?
So this is what I have to say is that the first thing that he did was he had the survey and asked every fan who's ever been to a game. First, he talked to the people who've been there forever, the season ticket holders. He did surveys with everybody who's been to a game and asked them all the questions and made a list of the priorities of what wanted to be in the project. And then he pushed them all into the project. I don't know if that means – I think it was definitely a legacy project for him.
Sure.
It was something that was going to live on for the next 100 years.
It was how he was going to make his mark.
Trev guy left this behind,
Yeah.
this brand new, complete concourse, new South Stadium, fancy, upgraded stadium. I think so. But the main thing was he wanted to accomplish all the things the fans wanted. He wanted the internet access to be better. He wanted the improvement of South Stadium where you can get to a bathroom or you can get to a concession stand. He wanted to be able to put more seat backs in there. Yes, that reduces the amount of attendance, but it makes it more comfortable for you. He wanted to make the creature comforts better, or at least as close as you can get to me being in my basement. And that's what you're fighting against. You're fighting against 4K TV in my basement for me to leave the house and go and spend 7 hours going to a game,
Between
maybe tailgating, dropping
yes.
my kids off, paying money for a babysitter. You're competing against a lot of stuff. And so he said, here's the list. And he put all the things in there. Was that the right thing to do? In the end, probably not. It was too much to ask for. But I understand what he was going for. I think he thought, like many people have thought over the years, whatever I ask for, the people of Nebraska will give it to me. The problem was I don't think he understood. It reminds me of Star Wars.
Okay.
Reminds me of Star Wars. Star Wars thought no matter what we put out, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And they made the mistake of putting out 2 Star Wars movies in the same year, right? One of which, Han Solo, I think Solo's a pretty good movie.
I think it's bad.
I think it's a good movie. But because you'd already put out another movie, the fans of Star Wars were like, yeah, I know, but I'm a little tired. And I paid $100 for my family to go to the movies just 6 months ago. We just paid for the brand new training facility. Just finished paying that off. Or just finished. That's not even done yet. We just started paying that off. And now you're asking me for another
$500 million, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
By the time it's done,
it's probably going to be $600 million by the time it's done.
Yeah.
So you ask me for that now, and I think for the first time in the history of the program, the fan base and the fundraisers said, well,
Pump the brakes.
Hold on.
Pump the brakes.
We can't do that. And that's never happened before. And I don't think Trev saw it coming. I know for a fact that Trev did not see that coming. The reaction he got from the fundraisers.
By the way, that's probably the best thing that could have happened to Disney when it came to putting out 2 movies like that at the same time.
Taught them their lesson.
It taught them their lessons that they just can't just throw out any crap and that you'll just take it, because there was some kickback from that.
Yeah.
And it actually made them, not do that again and make a better product down the line.
Rethink it, yeah. But I think this is the first time that an athletic director or a school here at Nebraska had to say to themselves, oh, maybe we can't just do what we want.
Well, and at the same time, though, let's say Nebraska wins 9 games in the next 2 seasons. Like, those checks get written a lot easier then.
They may. So you got to remember this too. Even though the economy's gotten better and we've dropped some interest rates and we've done some things to move things around, and compared to the rest of the world, we're actually doing better in terms of that. We still have a place now where people who have money don't necessarily want to spend it right now because of the way things are going.
Sure.
You have people cutting jobs. You got some big businesses around here having to cut back. I know this is a fundraiser here locally. I know it's changed over the last 3 years. It's changed. And that's what they're dealing with. And they're dealing with a group of people who are saying, maybe in 5 years, if we get everything back to where we like it, we'll be right there for you
at least
again.
We understand the status quo now, because it's still, part of it is not just the change, but that there's instability, right? It's not just the change itself, but it's, okay, what changes next?
Yeah, and
if things even out.
And no president in places. He's trying to go out and raise this money too.
Right.
And people are going, well, who's going to be the president? And Trevor's saying, I want this person to be a president. And they're going, well, why isn't he? Well, because this group of the regions are saying, no, we don't want that guy. So it was really, instability is the perfect word for it. I'm not going to give you a boatload of cash if you can't tell me what my return on investment is.
Yeah, if you can't tell me what I'm paying for.
I need to know exactly what it is. I need to know who's going to be in charge too.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why he got the deal from Ted Carter when he left to extend, because he wanted to say, I'm going to be here for this. Turns out
that was not the case.
It was not the case. Yeah.
That is interesting, though. We'll see. Like some people on the stream mentioned, he gave a non-answer about the stadium project.
Yeah.
I do think some version of that project is going to
They're going to do some work.
I don't know I don't think it's going to be Trev's version. There's going to be some version of that with likely a smaller price tag.
Have you sat in South Stadium, Avery?
Yes.
So I did it for
It's been a while.
Spring game a few years back.
Yeah.
Wanted to go in the second half to be able to watch all 22, right? So left the press box, went down there. And I'm not going to lie, I hadn't been there since 2006 for that spring game when the other part of the stadium was being redone. I couldn't figure out how to get in.
Yeah.
I was confused. Like, up here, this way? It was, I was kind of scared. And it was a spring game. And there wasn't even that many people there.
Yeah.
Imagine when it's full.
I think it's been.
I got to go to the bathroom. I mean, goodness, scary.
It is a little scary. And so they need to fix that. Make South Stadium less scary.
Yes, for
That's
Michael. Yes,
number.
I need that. I need to be less scary South Stadium.
He's getting old. He's getting jittery.
I know. I don't know where to go. I got to get a sandwich.
Got to go to the bathroom in one of the troughs. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're also on KFOR in Lincoln for this hour number 3. That's Michael Severe. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. And we are brought to you by our friends at Warhorse Casino. Today is your last day to get entries into the $100,000 prop card challenge, which you can do with a $50 sportsbook wager or 50 points earned on slots or racing. You've got $100,000 on the line if you can get at least 18 of the 25 prop questions right for the semifinals and finals of the tournament. 18 gets you eligible to start winning cash and prizes. Must be a Warhorse Rewards member to qualify, and you'll have to go to Lincoln to validate and activate those entries as well. WarhorseCasino.com for a full list of house rules and details. Joining us now is Justen Gammel. He is a NFL draft scout. He is a host of the SickPodNFL Draft. Justen, how are you this morning?
I'm doing good, guys. Good to hear from you. It's been about a year, actually.
It's about that time, right? Justen,
Yeah.
Let's hop right into the quarterback position. I know Caleb Williams at the top is kind of undisputed at this point, but a lot of movement in that 2 and 3 spot, depending on who you ask. You've got Jaden Daniels, Drake May,
J.J. McCarthy.
McCarthy all of a sudden looks like he might be the number 4 pick in the draft, which a month ago seemed unheard of. How do you start to differentiate between that group of guys right behind Caleb Williams?
Ooh, I mean, right away, I think you just go with the measurables, right? You say, let's look at what they're physically made of, and J.J. McCarthy's a little thin, Jaden Daniels a little thin. You look at their arm talent. They all actually have solid arms. I think Drake May is probably the best package of size, arm talent. You saw him carry that North Carolina team, and you look at J.J. McCarthy, and he really didn't get to throw the ball a whole lot, right? So you have this weird mix of guys who are raw tools, haven't thrown the ball, have thrown the ball a lot. Jaden Daniels played 5 years. He transferred to LSU. His first year there wasn't great. His second year was amazing, won the Heisman. So it's really a kind of a mess, and that's why we're seeing such a, not consensus type thing this year, where it's like all three of these guys can be in any order for anybody. But I do think for me, Drake May is the best package of everything. I think a lot of people are kind of split on his tape, but I think, if you look at the second year he was the starter at North Carolina, he lost so many pieces.
Yep.
He had a new offensive coordinator. It was just a mess. And he was carrying that offense, really just him, trying to get these young guys going, trying to get the new system, trying to get the new footwork, the new drop back style. It was just a whole different ball game for him. But I think he showed me the most as far as what he can do to carry an actual NFL offense. But he's kind of my number 2. Then Jaden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy, honestly, you flip a coin because they're both I don't even know how to say. Jaden Daniels is a bit raw as far as some of the things you would expect from a fifth-year guy. With that LSU team. You would think he would have been able to do it. And it was just, you felt like he was still playing catch-up. And that's a little bit of a red flag, where JJ looked like he had it all under control. But, when you throw the ball 8 times versus Penn State, of course you look like you have it under control. So you're really trying to balance out these weird pictures. And, there's not a lot of consensus, but that's kind of cool. It's awesome this year.
Yeah, the Drake May comparisons to Josh Allen's college career is kind of, that second to last year. Josh Allen's got talent all around him at Wyoming. He looks really good. Then the next year, he throws more interceptions and he struggles because he lost a lot of his talent. Same thing with Drake May. And physicality-wise, I mean, I saw him play as a basketball player, Drake May. You can see that he's a really good athlete. In terms of athleticism and physicality, he's the one guy that you feel comfortable thinking, okay, he's probably not going to get hurt because of how big he is.
Yeah, I mean, he ran a lot at North Carolina, and he's not a twitchy athlete. He's not really rugged like Josh Allen, but he can move the ball with his feet. And you saw him kind of deliver some blows to some of those smaller DBs that are like, oh, shoot, this guy's 6'5", 230. Like, I didn't expect that. And, that's great because we see, like I said, we see Jaden Daniels, we see J.J. McCarthy, and those frames are not meant to take the beatings that Drake Mays can. So it definitely is a plus on his eval.
Justen, I'm wondering, I'm going to ask you this because I have asked everybody this, and I'm sort of obsessed with this guy. Michael Penix, if he didn't have the injury history, where does he fit into this draft? Because I still think he's going to creep into the first round. I think somebody will either trade back in or trade back and get Michael Penix in the first round. But if we weren't concerned about the medicals, where would he fit?
Well, here's the other problem: is it's not just that he has a medical history; it's that if you go back and watch his Indiana tape, he was a completely different athlete, and I think a lot of those injuries actually kind of zapped the athleticism that he would have had. So it's more like I'm not even mostly worried that he's going to get hurt, because that's just something that can happen to anybody. But he's definitely not the athlete anymore that can evade pressure and that can, slide off his spot and reset his feet and make good throws. It's more of like it's a limitation in his game now. I do think there's a chance he slides into that first round area, like the back five to something like that, back five picks, right? Like kind of like Lamar did, where some team trades up and says, we want the fifth year option on this guy. But I'm just, the Michigan game, as well as so many other games this past year at Washington, showed the issues that I've had with him. And it's just that he's not a good athlete, and he doesn't necessarily have the arm talent to kind of throw off platform when his feet aren't set and get his, like if his hips aren't perfect, if his delivery and setup aren't perfect, he's not throwing the ball well. And I think that's just part of, he lost so much athleticism with all those injuries. So now you have this guy who you ask, can he really protect himself? Can he get himself out of pressure and get himself, around the unblocked guys? And it's really tough to see. And you don't want to see your quarterback that's going to stand back there and just take these big shots like he did last year and, over his career. So, you're right. He's probably a first rounder with that arm talent, but it's a risk for sure.
Yeah, his numbers against pressure declined greatly. That muddied pocket. Let me ask you about wide receiver, because I remember when watching Marvin Harrison Jr. as a freshman and going back to when I remember watching his dad at Syracuse, I was like, wow, he's just a bigger version of his father with more speed and more athleticism. And I thought to myself, whenever this kid comes out, he's the number one wide receiver. But now you look at Malik Neighbors and what he can do, and Romaduze and other guys. Is Marvin Harrison still a lock to be the number one wide receiver that goes?
No, I mean, absolutely not, which is crazy to say because, he is fantastic. He's a great prospect. But there's just a difference when you watch. I mean, I go back to even like Jamar Chase, a lot of other guys that are just so much more dynamic after the catch. And I think in today's NFL, it's not that it's a necessity. It's not that it's a must or it's a game killer, I guess you want to say for Marvin Harrison Jr. But it is something that with all these too high looks, you see a lot of teams just going to the quick hitters, and they need yards after catch. And in this West Coast style of offense, we see so much. You need yards after the catch. Marvin Harrison Jr. probably doesn't really give you a lot of that. And on top of that, I think there are some speed questions that he hasn't answered. I think a lot of people are torn, like, is he a 4.38 guy or is he a 4.53 guy? And that's tough because on tape, you should be able to say, oh, he's probably this. But I think people that are higher on him want to say he's a little faster than he probably is, where you look at Malik Neighbors and the dude is just absolutely dynamic as hell. He compares pretty much in every measurable to Jamar Chase. And on the field, largely the same, right? So if you're saying, hey, we're going to get the Jamar Chase clone, I mean, that is so dynamic. I don't think that you can say, yeah, that guy's definitively, the wide receiver 2 in this class. There's going to be a lot of teams that take him first as the first wide receiver. Kyle Shanahan, the Brandon Ayuk year that he came out, Kyle Shanahan said, I had Brandon Ayuk as my top receiver because I loved the yak. I love the yards after catch. So, I mean, you got to think a lot of NFL teams are going to think the same way and prioritize different things. So I think Malik Neighbors is definitely in the running to be the first receiver taken.
We're talking with Justen Gammel. He is from Game Scout and the Sick Pod. Justen, as you look at teams that might trade up, looking at team needs here, obviously, the doesn't look like JJ McCarthy is going to be around if you want to wait in the 10 to 12 range anymore. It looks like maybe Bo Nix is your guy if you're stuck there. Of the teams that might trade up for a quarterback, I know the Vikings have been a popular pick to maybe do that. Who do you think trades up, and do they trade up? Do they try and trade up into that top 3 in order to get one of the 3 main guys, or do you think somebody's going to trade up and be okay with JJ McCarthy?
Oh, I wish I was better at this. The trades every year just shock the hell out of me. So I'm always like, wait, what?
So let's just focus on team need. Who needs, if you're like, take everything else off the table, who needs to move up the most?
I mean, I do think Minnesota's in a spot where they have to try something, right? I think Denver's in a spot where they have to figure something out. It's more about, is Washington and New England willing to sell? And, Washington trades away Sam Howell. And that kind of, to me, I know Daniel Jeremiah spoke about this, but I'm like, okay, so Sam Howell was teammates with Drake May. Do you want these two teammates who absolutely love each other, who are, they said they were great friends? Do you want them battling for a spot? Or would that kind of get in their heads and, make them not play up to their game? To me, that says Washington's staying pat and they want to take Drake May. New England, you trade Mac Jones. Why would you trade out of that pick and just settle for some run-of-the-mill later round quarterback or something less proven than a first-round guy? I think Minnesota and Denver, maybe even Las Vegas, would probably want to trade up. I'm just not necessarily seeing what other people are seeing when they say Washington or New England would move those picks. I don't see it. For two quarterback-needy teams in a quarterback-deep class, I think you stay put and you got to take your guy. You got to take your highest-graded guy after Caleb Williams.
So if let's say that puts you in a position where number 4 is the highest you can trade up, which means you're looking at probably a J.J. McCarthy in that situation. Yeah. At what point do you say, hey, the draft capital to move up from, let's say, 12, I think is where Denver is, to 4, doesn't make sense. Let's move from mid-second round to back into the bottom of the first to get maybe a Michael Penix?
I mean, how I look at it is you have your players stacked up, and I've talked to a lot of teams about the way they stack their draft boards. And I think a team would have to have, a monumental grade on J.J. McCarthy to move into that 4 spot, as opposed to saying, we'll take Penix in the second round, we'll take Bo Nix in the second round, we'll take Spencer Rattler in the third round. Because to make that, we've seen teams each year trade up and they take, their guy, Trey Lance or whoever else we've seen, and they bust. And now it looks so silly. The Broncos did it with Paxton Lynch. When you trade up for a guy and he's not the guy, it sets you back in such a big way as opposed to just staying where you are and taking that guy. When you give up picks. So I think it's going to come down to which team has that high of a grade on J.J. McCarthy to be able to trade into that 4 spot. You've got to know that he is your guy and he is going to basically save your franchise because you're giving up a lot for it. And when there's other quarterbacks on the board that might succeed later and make you look silly for trading up for a guy that wasn't even the best at his spot that you could have had, you really have to be sold. So I think this is where those scouts are going to make their money and say, we can get McCarthy. He's going to save it. He's going to be the guy. He's going to save our franchise. He's going to make our OC look amazing. And, it's going to just come down to what grades they have on him.
Justin, about 10 or 12 times since Mike Ditka was a tight end in college, we've had teams decide, you know what, I'm going to take a tight end in the top 10. And the majority of them, a couple of them were Nebraska players, didn't turn out to be great players. Does Brock Bowers get into that top 10 this year? And if people kind of learn their lesson that maybe the value's not there at that position, at least in terms of return on investment in draft?
Brock Bowers. Yeah. I think Brock Bowers is a little different tight end than we usually see. And it's more he's such a hybrid of this weird run after the catch freak, but he's also, a traditional tight end, and he can run up the seam. He can make catches outside his frame. I think the one thing, like we talked about with Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr., the one thing that saves Brock Bowers being a tight end is the way that he can run after the catch and control the middle of the field, because people are so scared of what he can do. You watch him run a 3-yard stick route right over the offensive tackle and just sit down, and teams in college would lose their mind. You could tell they were selling out, trying to make sure this guy does not get the ball because he's so good after the catch. So I do think there's going to be that team that says, look, we have some receivers. Let's see, even Tennessee, for instance, they've got some receivers now. They've got Treylon Burks. They've got Calvin Ridley. We need a guy that can control that middle of the field, give us some, amazing run after the catch ability, and let's take Brock Bowers and just live with it. Granted, it is weird to take a tight end that high, but when a guy gives you this much dynamic ability after the catch, it's probably worth it, especially the way defenses are playing today with those 2 high shells. So I do think there's probably only 1 or 2 spots he can go. If he gets past Tennessee, I don't think we see him go in the top 10, but that's probably where I would see him get taken.
Justin, who's a guy that you are super high on? Doesn't have to be first round, could be anywhere, that you're super high on that you are not seeing get the amount of love in terms of draft position that you think they deserve?
Ooh, there's probably 2 One offense, one defense. I think on defense, it's probably Chop Robinson, the defensive end from
Penn
Penn State.
Yeah.
Had a great combine.
I mean, oh my God, he had an amazing combine, right? I think he outdid Micah Parsons on like every measurable except 40.
Mhm.
He has longer arms than Micah Parsons, but he's still around a 4.48, right? And at what 6'4", 255, that's insane.
Yeah.
So he runs, he jumps out the gym. His tape was fantastic. A lot of times, it was a lot that he didn't get to finish a lot. The Big Ten doesn't throw the ball a whole lot. They run a different style of offense, so you see a lot of chances where he's whooping dudes and then the ball's out, or it's a quick screen and you're like, okay, well, that's not going to show up on the stat sheet. But I think this guy has twitch off the ball. He has a huge array of pass rush moves. He has counters. He's an athlete. He's bendy. He's flexible. There's so much to work with this guy. And in this class, there's not a lot like him that are these like pure twitched up freaks. It's a lot of, either power guys like Jared Verse or technicians like Leatu Latu from UCLA. So I think Robinson is kind of one of his kind in this class. And on the offensive side of the ball, the left tackle from Washington, Troy Falconew.
Yeah.
The guy has answers to anything you can throw at him. At the combine, he looks like a linebacker running around. He is just such a fantastic athlete. He has longer arms than Joe Alt, who's 6'9". I think he can play guard. I think he can play center. I think he can play tackle anywhere you want him. And today, today's NFL is crazy with all the injuries, with all the moving around, the shuffling. We see every year these teams have offensive lines that are shuffled around. This dude can play all 5 spots. So why is he not being valued higher, especially the athlete he is? So he's my guy that I'm like, if you take him top 10, if Chicago takes him at 9, wouldn't shock me, wouldn't be the wrong move at all.
Last year, you had a few people upset after the draft that where running backs went early and saying, well, maybe that's not a great idea. But, it worked out pretty well for everybody. Is there somebody, I'm assuming, into the second round that you look at and you go, that's a rookie running back that could have success in the league next year?
Oh, well, Trey Benson from Florida State. I've loved him since like the start of the year. And the funny thing is, I was arguing with some people like, I don't think he's going to run. He might run 4.5 flat, 4.48. And people were like, you're insane. And I'm like, I'm high on him, and I don't even think. Then he comes out, runs a 4.38, 220 something pounds. And the way he is so agile and so shifty on his feet, I'm like, all right, well, I don't think he'll go in the first round, but this is a first round caliber talent. So some team's going to take him in the second round, and he's going to be their guy and be so dynamic. So I think he's head and shoulders, top, like the top running back in the entire draft.
Justen, I want to kind of flip sides on you here. I asked you who you like that's maybe a little underrated. Who's somebody that's getting a lot of love right now that you're not totally sold on?
Top of my head, it's probably, and this is boring, it's not a fun answer, but the center from Oregon, Jackson Powers Johnson. He goes to the Senior Bowl, looks cool, has a lot of pancakes and a lot of physical reps. And he gets all this round one talk. I've seen him as high as like 17. But then you go back and watch his tape, and the tape is just terrible. And I don't mean it's just terrible like he's not winning his reps a lot. He has outstanding upper body strength. His hands are vice grips, but his upper body technique is rough. He is not a knee bender, and I think it's because he carried so much weight on his upper body. But the guy doesn't. He has balance issues everywhere. He's struggling to stay on his feet. He's a slow mover. He doesn't climb well. And as a center, you got to be able to climb and get off the ball. That's not his game. I think he either needs to lose weight or, maybe you move him to guard because at center, he's going to get blown off the ball a lot. He's just one of those guys where I'm like, all right, there's a lot to work with here, but maybe second, third round, maybe even fourth round. First round talk has just been crazy to me. I've been wrong before. I could be wrong on this one, but I got to plant my flag, and I cannot figure out the first round hype with this guy.
All right, Justen, one more for me, and then we'll let you out of here. I'm going to go back to quarterbacks to finish up here. Who talks themselves into Joe Milton? Because somebody's going to, right? Probably round 4-ish, mate, but somebody's going to talk themselves into it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, who would do it? I mean, I could see even, Buffalo saying, look, you're a lot like Josh Allen, right? You're the big physically, you can scramble, your arm is insane. Who better to learn from than this raw talent from Wyoming that came in, and now he's, a superstar of the NFL? Why not sit behind him and look at the way he harnesses those tools and distributes the ball on time and accurately? You know what I mean? I don't know how high Joe Milton could go because those physical tools are elite. Just physically, he's an alien. But I do think his tape was so bad over so many years that it's going to be rough for the team that could possibly convince himself that he could be their future starter. I do think he's just that late day 3 pick that, you know, someone says, look how far he can throw. Look at how big he is. Look at how fast he is. And they take him. So Buffalo would be my guess just because it kind of fits, you know, the Allen mold, but who knows?
Justin, we appreciate your time. Enjoy the draft season, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon.
Of course. Thanks for having me on, guys.
That's Justin Gammel from SickPod, the NFL Draft. You can find him at GAM Scout on Twitter.
Most recent top 10 tight ends, right? We're going to go back to the 80s when they did it and they made some mistakes.
Kyle Pitts.
So you got Kellen Winslow in 04. He was number 6.
Yeah, you got
overall.
Vernon Davis.
Vernon Davis was number 6
out
as
of
well.
Maryland.
Took a while to get going.
But he had a pretty decent
career.
career.
Decent career.
But he was a freak combine guy.
Beat the Saints in one of the most devastating losses I've ever watched as a Saints fan in 2011.
But he ran like
won a Super Bowl.
4.37.
He had the highest vertical forever.
Yeah.
In terms of guys over 200 pounds.
And at like 260, he ran like a 4.37.
He was an incredible athlete, and that's why. TJ Hockenson went 8.
Okay.
Had a decent career, but he's changed teams. And then Kyle Pitts at 4.
Yeah.
The question is what you can get.
Positional value.
What you can get there at that spot, are you going to get so much more out of a tight end than you are at a left tackle, a first pass rusher that may be going? Are you going to get more value? It's hard to say. And it hasn't been throughout the history of the league. You haven't got the great value from that top 10 tight end as you would have gotten from that position.
Which is kind of funny because I think tight ends are more valuable now than they've ever been.
No doubt.
But you still don't necessarily have that positional value that you do at some of those other places. They almost feel like, in terms of not in how they're viewed now, but I think people look at tight ends and say, oh, I can find the guy later.
Oh, you no doubt.
Right? It's kind of like running backs in that sense where it's like, I don't have to use a first rounder on this guy unless they're so physically special, like a Kyle Pitts, like a Vernon Davis, like whoever, right? That you look at him and go, I have to take this guy now. Otherwise,
you don't have to take him though.
The drop.
Don't do it.
Right, but that's what they think.
Yeah,
right?
they think that way. Yeah, sure.
But you get Kittle in round 6, and you get Laporta later. Like, you've got guys that you can get later, and I think that's pretty much always going to be true with tight ends, which is weird because it's a pretty highly valued position once you get in the league.
Oh, it's the most hybrid position. You're part offensive lineman, you're part wide receiver, and you're tight end.
Yeah.
And you can do so many things with it. And it's the most valuable position in the red zone.
Yeah.
It's huge. I'm just saying, are you getting as much value as you would, again, going and getting an offensive lineman or a pass rusher as you are from a tight end? And look, we've had some great tight ends over the years, some of them, but a lot of them weren't top 10 picks.
Most of them weren't.
Most of them were top 10 or top 20 picks even.
No, a lot of them come in later rounds. It's kind of funny. It's probably the biggest difference between how they're valued in the draft and how they're valued once they get into the actual league. Like, there's a huge separation.
And Kyle Pitts now gets one of the best tight end passers in the history of the league in Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
He loves throwing it to tight end.
Absolutely.
So we'll see what happens with that.
Well, we saw it with Hoskinson as well. Yeah. We will return. We're quickly running down the barrel of this show here. We'll get a little bit more into NFL draft. I want to ask some quarterback questions of my guy, Michael Severe, here, coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's Michael Severe. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube from the Pillar Exterior stage here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. And where you should be at live tonight is the Omaha Supernovas at the CHI Health Center, 7 p.m. first serve against the Grand Rapids Rise. Make sure you get out to supernovas.com to get tickets, schedule info. You can get some merch there as well, but get tickets to tonight's game at 7 p.m. supernovas.com. Michael.
What was that drop what was that bite? What was that person?
So that's Deontay Wilder.
Okay. The fighter.
Yes.
Right.
Damon has an obsession with him saying to this day.
To this day.
So
that reminds me of a
play
skit.
This all the time.
Reminds me of a skit from, I think it was either Mad TV or Living Color, where it's Farrakhan on there, a fake Farrakhan. He's like, 400 years of slavery, 200 years of apartheid, 31 years of the Jeffersons and reruns. We've been overcoming stuff. That's what it reminds me for some reason.
To this day.
To this day. Okay, got it.
To this day.
Yeah, it's just a DB favorite.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Got
it.
Speaking of favorites, I wanna get into your NFL draft bag a little bit here.
Yep.
What are the differentiators for you between the quarterbacks right now? Because I'm curious, are you a Caleb Williams guy, talent-wise?
Mhm.
And or does the other stuff kind of bother you at all? I know, we talked to Vers, and he's all the way out as a Bears fan. He wants nothing to do with him. And then if you are, how do you differentiate? The same thing I asked Justen, basically. How are you differentiating these guys that there seems to be pretty fluid movement between Jaden Daniels, Drake May, all of a sudden JJ McCarthy's up in that group? Like, how are you sifting through these guys?
Okay, this has nothing to do with Vers when I say this, okay?
Yeah.
But if Caleb Williams was white and did everything he did,
Yeah.
everything, whether it was trying to restructure a league that he's coming in or crying after a game like Tim Tebow or painting his fingernails, like if he was white, this would not be an issue for the majority of people.
Okay.
I think I know what some of the issues that Vers might have with him, but all those things that he did is what college kids do. He's a college kid. He's also the most unique college kid in the history of the sport. There's never been a guy who's walking out of college after making $12 million.
True.
Now, I would say that Eric Dickerson made a lot of money on the side, but nobody's
officially
made $12 million.
Taxable income.
He is unique. This is a national pitch man who is leaving college to go to the NFL. Okay. I love his talent. I always talk about, earlier our draft guy was talking about Jaden Daniels and some of the stuff he did and didn't do at LSU. When you have a horrible defense and you're forced to try to score every single drive, you're not going to have a lot of success. You're not. We saw it with Patrick Mahomes, who had to put up incredible numbers at Texas Tech while his defense was giving up 46 points a game.
Yeah.
We saw it with Caleb Williams at USC, having to do it. And he put too much pressure on himself at times, and part of that's Lincoln Riley's fault.
Yep.
I think the kid has got everything he needs. He can make every single throw. He's athletic. Yes, there's a lot of off-balance stuff, and that's not comfortable anymore. But, now, that's simply the Mahomes factor.
Yeah.
A lot of kids are doing that now. I feel comfortable with him going number one. I think he's the perfect person for Chicago. All he's got to do is to be the greatest quarterback in Chicago Bears history. He's got to beat Sid Luckman.
I would say that's not a huge bar.
Exactly. He's got to beat Sid Luckman, and he's got to beat oh my God, the one that married the Calvasi girl.
McMahon?
No. He got traded from Denver. Chicago.
Cutler.
Jay Cutler. He's going to be better than those two guys.
Yeah.
That's it.
He's got to be better.
And I think he has the capability to do that. And I like having DJ Moore there, and they're building talent around him. I believe that football-wise and as a quarterback, I think he's a lock. It's hard to see at quarterback.
Sure.
But if there's one position, the one number of draft pick that's actually been more successful, it is the one guy.
Yeah.
The one guy actually has usually turned out pretty well outside of some Jamarcus Russell kind of stuff.
Sure.
It's the two guy that's been kind of scary.
Yeah.
And the four guy.
Yeah.
Or the six guy. That's been a little bit. But as the one spot in Chicago, I feel very comfortable. I'm very happy that the Bears have a chance to finally have a quarterback they can cheer for.
So in on Caleb Williams.
Yes.
Not concerned. The one thing that I have, and
Does
it's
I
not
care about his fingernails? No,
it's not about that stuff as much for me. Is I sometimes, maybe I'm thinking too much about this. Is I sometimes wonder about guys that have to be out of system so often, being able to perform in system.
Yeah.
Right. Because in the NFL, you have to do some stuff in system to be consistently good. Right.
What would you say percentage-wise from Mahomes in system?
Well, it was more this year.
Yeah, because even 2 years ago when his offensive line was really struggling.
Yes.
When they ended up losing in the Super Bowl that year.
It was a ton of out of system stuff.
Yeah,
right. But
I'd say half of his throws are out of system.
Right. But 50% is still a pretty large percentage. How comfortable is Caleb Williams? Like, does he bail out too quick? Will he bail out too quick because of some maybe bad habits he's had to form?
Yeah.
Right. Because of USC. That's the only question I have.
And they'll be coaching.
Yeah.
He's going to get better at everything he does. He's going to have an offensive line if the Bears continue to do what they're doing. That's going to give him time to throw. Look, if you don't get the ball out of your hands in less than 2 seconds in this NFL, you're probably not going to be successful.
Right.
Unless you are Josh Allen or you are Patrick Mahomes that are creating like that. He can do those things. I'm completely in on him and all the personality stuff. The things he said about what they don't get at the combine or what they want for them at the combine and what they're not getting compensated for, I completely understand. If there was any other business and you were asked to do that same stuff, you'd be getting compensated for it.
That's fair.
Any other business. And it's a business. That's what it is. He's walking into a business that is constantly changing and continues to change. And this next group of athletes coming out of college, the NIL kids, are going to ask for changes.
Yeah, and they're going to expect more, right?
They are.
Because they are the first people that this isn't, going to the NFL is obviously a dream for a lot of these guys.
Sure.
But it's not, I have to get to the NFL to cash in on my ability, right? You mentioned $12 million for Caleb Williams. He's already cashed in on his ability.
Oh, yeah.
This is just a continuation of that. So when you've got something to fall back on, it's a little easier to push for change. Right? I mean, it is. Like
yeah,
Caleb
it
Williams
is. It is. He has the cachet to push for change.
and he didn't have to come out, right?
No,
like,
he could stay another year in the COVID year.
right. That's what I mean. Like he could have come out, he could have come back and said, well, I'll just keep making more money at USC.
Mhm.
You know, he could have come back and said, hey, I'm getting pretty good. I'm getting paid pretty good here.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably not that far off from the rookie pay scale. Like it's in the neighborhood.
Yeah. But like Caitlin Clark, we said earlier, if you're a competitor, you want to go against the best. You want to prove yourself against the best. So that's why he chooses.
But at
obviously, to
least
go to
you've
the
got
NFL. Yeah.
some leverage.
He did have leverage compared to other people
to say, and more guys are going to have that, right?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
they don't need the NFL to the same degree
as they did before.
that you did before.
Yeah. Go from broke to having some money in your pocket.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Right,
That's the only chance you have to make real money. As far as the other guys, you talked about the slope shoulders before.
I'm not a huge fan of slope shoulders.
Any of those guys in the draft that you're like, I'm not loving the look of the shoulders.
No,
here.
I've talked a lot about Jaden Daniels, and I'm concerned, obviously, about his weight, right? But also to say this, he's taken so many. That Justen guy was talking about that second the last year, the first year he got to LSU. If you go back and you watch that, and you watch down the stretch, defense was horrible.
Yep.
And the reason why they were in games was Jaden Daniels, and he was taking big shots and he was making hits, even in the SEC championship game against Georgia.
Yep.
When you're going against one of the best teams in college ball history. He battled.
Yeah.
He battled in that game and ended up getting blown out, but he kept putting up yards. He kept doing things. He's a tough kid. Even in that Alabama game, when they decided we're going to knock him out of this game because that's the way we're going to win it, they eventually did. But remember, he came back in the game and ran another play before they yanked him off the field because of concussion stuff.
Yeah.
He's tough. He's a tough kid. And athletically, he is a mix. The way he runs, the way he throws, much better thrower than Lamar Jackson coming out of college. Yeah. Much better thrower than Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson threw for 3,500 yards coming out of college his senior year, last year there. He's a better thrower. He's as fast and as athletic. This is a blasphemy. Michael Vickish, right? Which is blasphemy, I know.
A little bit, yeah.
He's got a lot of that. How many times do you see him get in the open field and pull away from guys? It happens all the time. He's got sneaky, true speed. All those things together, the question marks can be the same thing. Is with that size, can he survive?
Can he stay healthy?
Kyler Murray is short but thick.
He's a thick guy. Same with Russell Wilson. Thick.
Short but thick.
Yeah.
Have high releases.
Caleb Williams. Thick.
This is a taller guy
skinny.
that's thinner. So get him on a program. Get some weight on him. Get some red beans in that kid.
Yeah, you just got to wonder about the frame. Like, because how much is the frame? How much can it support? Right.
But he's got
and still
arm.
have that dynamic. I mean, to me, the guy that he reminds me the most of is RG3 in terms of
his legs aren't as skinny.
They're not as skinny.
That dude's legs.
But you've got a
sprinter.
You've got a taller guy.
Yep.
Elite speed. Super dynamic playmaker. Really good arm. All these things. But you look at him and you go, I don't know if he can take the hits.
Yeah.
Right. And there wasn't. RG3 didn't have the frame to put more weight on.
It was literally one big hit that changed his whole career.
Yeah.
It's one big hit.
And that's all it takes.
And that's all it takes. And he never came back to what he was before that.
Right. He was this elite guy I mean, that's the thing people forget about RG3, right? Is he was incredible for about a year.
Yeah, I mean, he got him to the playoffs.
He was so good.
Survived the knee injury. Then, of course, what happened in the playoff game on that bad field in Washington. Yeah, and then Drake May, I've a lot of questions about Drake May and his processing and everything. But in terms of physically, he's the most physically ready, I think, out of all of them. Height, in terms of what he is as an athlete, the way he can throw the ball, he's physically ready.
That's Michael Severe. I'm Ravi Lulla. We will be back to wrap up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're wrapping up the show here on a Thursday, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio, or maybe you're watching it live on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. We're here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the Pillar Exterior stage. That's Michael Severe. Appreciate Michael standing in for DB this morning, and I'm Ravi Lulla.
Barry does not like me. Oh, no, it's Mike L. Out of here. I like it. Sweet.
You've your reputation precedes you a little bit there.
Sweet. Nice.
That's okay. The one of the things I wanted to get to today before let's start with the Jet Award because it's a week from today.
Yes.
You're the executive director. Is that the right title?
I'm the executive director for the Jet Award Foundation.
Jet Award Foundation. So you put on the whole event. You do the whole thing.
Yep.
That's a week from today.
At Baxter Arena, April 4th.
Baxter Arena. There you go.
Approximately starting 5 to 6 for the VIP, 6:30 for the event. We got a lot of things involved with it. And this year, we've added tickets to the stands
Yeah.
So you can buy tickets to go to the event, sit in the stands at Baxter Arena, and also get the after party as well, which is featuring Larry the Cable Guy. So you get the whole gala.
And you get a little show.
And then afterwards, you come on down, take pictures, get autographs. We have famous people that, for Nebraska fans, Rich Glover, still the guy that people don't talk about enough.
Yeah.
This is a guy who finished third in the Heisman as a nose tackle, who won the Lombardi and the Outland in the same year.
Yeah.
One of the most decorated players in Nebraska history. And if you go back and watch the Oklahoma game in 71, he won that game.
Yeah.
That was him. You watch what he did, 70. You watch what he did in that game, he won that game for them.
For sure.
Yeah. So he's there. And Shaq Harris, who, you know James Shaq Harris is by any chance?
Yeah.
So Shaq Harris, the first black quarterback to ever start a season, right? Really good friends with Marlon Briscoe, former South Omaha guy who was the first quarterback to actually play and throw a ball in an NFL game. Passed away a couple years ago. We're given a trophy for Mr. Football, which is going to Anthony Rizak from Westside. That trophy is modeled after Marlon Briscoe.
Yeah.
To honor his memory. So we're bringing in Shaq to introduce Anthony, tell some stories about Marlon, give the trophy to him, since, you know.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. And a lot of, obviously all the former Nebraska guys, Mike Rozier and Eric Crouch, and so many great players that are going to be there. And we're going to give a special award to the volleyball team. We got a couple other special things as well. And
DB's going to MC.
DB's going to MC the kind of the second half of it, all the awards and stuff we're going to give out. We got a couple surprises as well that we're going to do. We got great auction items. We also have a cruise deal this year where if you decide that you're going to get the cruise either that night or in the next few days after it, huge discount. $500 off, plus they'll give $500 to the foundation.
Oh, nice.
For each cruise sold. And it's a 9-day cruise
with
Irving Fryer and Amon Green and Johnny Rogers and Eric Crouch and all these guys. And it's like 5 different ports, including the Dominican Republic and San Martin and all these places. It's a really cool cruise. We're actually thinking about doing it.
Yeah.
It starts off at like $1,449. It's a lot going on next Thursday.
Are they we got to ask for Johnny, right? Is there a pickleball court on the cruise ship?
I don't think so, but those cruise ships got everything on them now.
I know.
I
they
wouldn't
might
be surprised if it
might.
has one. Yeah, it's the Serenade of the Seas. I have to look it up and see if the Serenade of the Seas actually has a pickleball court inside it.
Because the Jets gotten pretty into pickleball.
He's a huge pickleball guy. He and his daughter play together. They're a team. They did a city championship that was put together about 7 months ago.
Yeah.
And they went to that and they won it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a spry fella.
I got to get out there. I got to play a little pickleball with Johnny the Jet.
Yeah. You know what I don't do?
What's that?
Play pickleball.
That's all right. It's,
can I give you a quick Rich Glover story?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so like 10 or 15 years ago, I can't remember what show it was when I was on the other station. It might have been Schick and Nick. It might have been the show after that.
Yeah.
But they wanted Rich Glover on. So I tracked him down out east.
In New Jersey.
And we had him on.
Yeah.
And then like a week or so later, I get this letter in the mail. He wrote me a 1-page letter.
I bet.
And it was just how much he just loved being on the air, how much he loved Nebraska, and that call anytime, that sort of thing. But I had never had that before, and I haven't had it since. Somebody like that had just written a 1-page letter, handwritten page letter, thanking me for having us on the air.
That's old school.
He's a really good dude, man. Really good dude.
That's super
Needs
cool.
to be talked about more, I think, in terms of former Huskers.
So what does the foundation do?
So it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
We're raising money for scholarships.
Yep.
Metro Community College, which has all these trade classes, over 150 of them, majors that you can go through. We have the Johnny Rogers Career and Technical Scholarship, which provides tuition, books, and fees to students who get accepted for the scholarship as long as they're majoring in the trades.
Yep.
We've had over 300 that have had the scholarship since 2017. We got almost 150 that have graduated. Currently, I think we have 147 or something like that are on campus, that are going through going through it. It's one of those things where you come out of school with zero debt. You come out of school with a
skill.
2-year degree that gives you a skill that you can make real good, solid, beyond living wage. And once one generation goes to college, or at least goes to Metro Community College and gets their degree, you know what? The next generation is a better chance. So we're fighting generational poverty, obviously, by doing that. But we've also expanded to Iowa Western. So Iowa Western has 10 scholarships this year as well.
Nice.
Through the Johnny Rogers Career Technical to help the folks over in Pottawatomie County. We're also allowing Iowa students to apply for Metro and get the scholarship as well.
There you go.
There's no match from Metro for that, but we pay that. So we're just trying to get as many students into these classes with workable skills, which helps the job market, which helps everybody. And there are jobs that people need. Nurses are needed.
100%.
Diesel mechanics needed. IT guys needed.
Yeah.
And those are the guys and people that we're putting out. So we have about the average age is 28 for our students.
Oh, okay.
So it's a lot of they started working.
They're coming back.
They're coming back to school.
Yeah.
Or they're going part-time, that kind of thing. So yeah, we're it really is become really successful. And we just want more and more students to be able to take advantage of it.
Oh, I'm a big proponent of trade training and trade school. And I think there's way more opportunity there at places like Metro than people realize. Like if you haven't looked at their course,
look at the Culinary Arts Center.
Right.
It's by far the best at any community college.
For sure. And it's I think well regarded just in general, not just among community colleges, right?
Oh yeah.
So they've got real skills to learn, and it's a way more wide range. You mentioned like IT and stuff. Like I don't know that people think of trade school.
What about accounting?
And they think of IT, right?
Accounting.
But that's
a trade.
Yeah, most people think of trade school, they think of blue collar.
Exactly.
You're not necessarily, you don't have to go a blue collar. You can if you want.
Yeah,
those
pre-law.
jobs,
Pre-law is a trade.
Yeah, like those are,
I mean, there's a lot.
Those are great jobs to be had there as well. But even if you're not like, I don't necessarily know if I want to be a blue collar guy or whatever.
Yeah, no.
Like there's lots of opportunities. You could go check it out. Even if you're not doing it through the Jet Foundation.
Yep.
Like go check out Metro and the stuff they offer. I've looked at it for like data science and stuff like that to get classes and learn some of that stuff as well to help me in my other job. And so that's a super cool thing and why is that close to? Is it because he went to Omaha Tech?
Because of Omaha Tech and the trades, and because his whole goal when he was younger was to make $100,000, right?
Yeah.
Johnny Rodgers wanted to make $100,000, whether it be he was drafted by the Dodgers. Dodgers only offered him $25,000.
Yep.
He wanted to go to USC. He thought he could do a little bit better out there on the West Coast. Ends up coming to Nebraska. They told him he could play baseball and football. His goal was always making $100,000. He chose to go to the CFL because they could pay him $100,000 opposed to going someplace in the NFL when he was drafted. So he's always talked about that. Well, he looks now and says to himself, and we all say it, the fastest way to make $100,000 now
is to learn a trade.
Yeah. IT guys, men and women, starting at like $50,000 to $60,000, a couple years in, after they've gotten some more qualifications, you're making $80,000, $90,000.
Yeah, pretty easily.
And something you probably love. You probably grew up doing stuff involving computers, and you love it, right? So whether it be a nurse or it be that or a horticulturist, that's another one. I just had a girl tell me the other day she wants to go to school for horticulture, and I go, what? That's one of our majors, one of the trade majors at Metro. Why don't you apply for the scholarship?
Yeah,
so
I don't want
a lot of things out there.
I don't want people to hear trade and think like, oh, I got to be a mechanic, or I got to be I got to be a plumber or whatever, right?
And they're all great.
I would say those are all great, but even if that's not for you, you can still go and look at all these other things that we talked about, whether it's IT, whether it's accounting, whether it's horticulture, whether it's culinary. Yep. All of those are trades also.
Oh, yeah.
And the Jet Foundation helps with that. Metro helps with that. Iowa Western, it's cool that they're getting involved too. Before we go here, a couple minutes, I wanted to ask you about the governor's involvement in the AD search.
Yeah.
Because it made me a little uncomfortable. And I get that his background sort of makes him uniquely
as a region,
and a player. Like it's not as weird because of his background.
Yeah.
But I felt a little weird about the precedent that it maybe sets for a public official, an elected official being involved in an athletic director search.
Yeah.
Am I crazy there? Like, do you kind of understand where I'm coming from? And I made a distinction. I'd be more comfortable if it was the president of the university, although I still don't love that. But the athletic director made me uncomfortable that he was that involved. I mean, he talked to Dannen before he got the job. Mm-hmm. That was weird to me.
Yeah, he, as obviously a former black shirt and, playing at the University of Nebraska and then being a border regent, he does have a different relationship with the university. I will say as the governor of the state who cares a lot about workforce development and jobs, your largest employer in the state is the University of Nebraska. Sure. So he's got certain
and some of your highest paid employees too.
Exactly. Yeah. He's got some needs that he wants to see happen at the university. My problem was when he came out talking about the president of the university had to be these three things. And one of them saying, from Nebraska. That's not necessary. You bring the best talent you can in to take a job that is incredibly important. And then the other one saying that they're the same conservative beliefs as Nebraskans. Well, you're talking about, 27,000, I think, total with undergrads just at UNL. You add all the other students in from the other campuses. I'm telling you, the majority of those kids at that age aren't thinking of being conservative Republicans or whatever your beliefs are in terms of pilling. So it's more important about getting people in here, especially at president, that think forwardly, not what's happening this year, not what's happening in 5 years. Where are we going to be in 10 years and 15 years? That's the guy you need. He didn't put that in the list. He didn't talk about education experience. He didn't talk about experience in thinking forwardly. He didn't talk about any innovation, none of that. He talked about things that weren't totally necessary to be president.
That was my only problem.
That was to hire that guy.
Yeah.
That was my only problem with it. I understand that he has input and he's going to have input as the governor. I don't know if any other states like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many governors are former regents, former players.
I worry that it sets a weird precedent for somebody who's doesn't have that background to want to be involved in that situation.
Right.
And we already saw some of the issues with people thinking the Board of Regents is too politicized.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you've got that with the president, if you got that with the AD as well, I think you're going down a slippery slope of a place you don't want to be.
I don't think Ricketts would ever got involved.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
That's Michael Zavir. Michael, thank you so much for being here this morning. We appreciate it. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Shane Chillenberg producing. We will be back tomorrow, me and DB on Hurrdat Sports Radio.